you know, what is a girl's access to school? Um, what's the gap when a woman has a job? What's the gap between her wages and a man's wages for doing the same thing, and so on? What rights does a woman have? What rights does a woman have if she wants a divorce, or with if there's a divorce? What rights does a woman have with the child, and so on? And when you look at those studies, it's always 11 out of the 12 worst places in the world for women are
Hmm.
Muslim majority countries. 18 out of 20 of the worst places in the world are Muslim majority countries. You always get results like that. And so it's just, yeah, it's really interesting. If Islam is really great in the ways Muslims say it is, why does it always produce Sharia compliant hellholes that no one
Yeah.
wants to live in?
I have been trying to get someone like Muhammad Ajab, or what was that guy on Twitter, Suleiman? Some big Muslim apologist to debate me on which is better for humanity, Christianity or Islam. So far, no takers.
Yeah, they won't touch it.
I've not heard. Yeah, I mean, like, let's do this. If you guys think Islam is the solution of the world, let's have a debate on that. So I've been trying to get. I would like to have a sizable account. I'm not just going to debate some guy off the street, but someone to debate what you think is better. Because I have found a ton of research, David, that really just points out to some harmful effects from Islam, especially at regional and national levels, to just show like this horrible effects that flow out of Islam. And so I've been collecting that data for a while now, hoping to just try to get a debate to discuss this with a Muslim. So far, no takers.
Yeah, that's a topic that someone like Daniel Hakikachu would have debated you on, but now that he knows that you will read all the sources that he's going to completely misrepresent,
Uh huh.
he won't try it. He would take that debate, just not against you. He would take it against someone else who's not going to read all those sources, and which would allow him to
Yeah.
completely
Plus,
deceive people.
I've already debated him, and he did horrible. So like, what would, yeah, it's like, what is he gonna have to gain by going back into that thing? Because I have so much research I can throw out that he would not have time or the ability to deal with, and you just can't, because these are just facts. Like, I'm citing, like, numbers don't lie at the end of the day, and I have numerous studies finding similar results on multiple ways. So what are you going to do about that? There's nothing you can do about that. So the best thing they could do is just avoid the topic and pretend it doesn't exist.
And so Muslims are now, the takeaway here is Muslims are now in this mode where their dawah guys are people who are propped up by the Muslim community for attacking non-Muslims and defending Islam again, for trying to keep Muslims from doubting their religion. And this has a lot to do
Mm-hmm.
with chest thumping and we're so strong and things like that, which is repulsive to lots of other people around the world. And so it's kind of imploding right now. But here's what's interesting. So this is what's going on in the Muslim world is terrible for Islam. That's why it's imploding. It's wonderful for the Dawa guys. For the Dawa guys, if you want a quick path to get a bunch of instant followers and to become instantly popular and to get piles of money for a while, won't last forever, but a couple of years, 5 years, something like that. Become a Dawa guy. Portray yourself as I'm the one who's going to rescue Islam from this avalanche. I'm the one who's going to rescue Islam from all these kuffar. I will humiliate them all. I'll humiliate them all. They'll prop you up. You'll be their new champion.
And if you're a white convert, I mean, Apostate Prophet's got a great video on, like, why, like, Muslims love Europeans or something. If you're, for some reason, they like really want white converts. So if you're a white convert who says that, you, my sir or ma'am, will grow exponentially.
Yeah, so that is a quick way, and this funny spiral that they're caught in is the Dawa guys who are going to be the champions of Islam right now are the ones who are appealing to the Muslim community because they're strong. They're strong. But those are the same, and those are the guys who will defend child marriage and Muhammad's polygamy and beating women into submission. They'll defend all this stuff. They'll defend taking sex slaves and so on. They'll defend Muhammad for all this stuff. See, and the Muslim community, wow, they're so strong. They're so base. Look at them. They're defending all this. Non-Muslims are, again, they're still like in shock. Like, seriously, they're now admitting all this stuff that they said before it was all lies. So they're turning more people off. Turning more people away from Islam. They're creating more hostility because now you have all these people who weren't interested in Islam until they find out, wait, now you guys are calling for child marriage and stuff. Oh, I got a problem with this stuff. So now
Mm.
there's more hostility towards Islam, which means the Muslim community is going to panic more. And who are they going to put their faith in? They're Dawah guys. So look at the spiral. You prop up someone like Ali Dawah, Muhammad Hijab, Sheikh Uthman, all these guys. Oh, look, our new hero. This is the guy who's going to rescue us. These guys are horrifyingly bad. They look horrifyingly bad to non-Muslims, which turn more people against your religion. And then what do these guys do? Oh, you see, look how many people are against our religion. You have to support us even more. And then you support them even more. And it's like someone who's lost at sea and takes a drink of salt water because you're just thirsty and you're panicking. You take a drink of salt water, which just makes you thirstier. And so you drink
Mm-hmm.
more and it makes you even thirstier until you're completely dehydrated and you die. So Islam is in the process of drinking more and more Dawa salt water on its way to completely dehydrating itself
Alhamdulillah.
and shriveling up. That's where we're at. So anyway, we're talking about this guy, the Muslim cowboy, playing his guitar. So yeah, we've got a couple of video clips. We've got some tweets. Me and AP were talking about him the other day, and we're going through a couple of tweets. One of them was he was responding to you and schooling you. The Muslim cowboy is schooling you on humiliating you
Sure
on logical fallacies. But
Dude,
anyway,
I love when he specifically thinks he can school me on that, which I always find adorable because not only does he just like make it worse, he clearly doesn't understand how these fallacies are used or when you can use it. Like, the common one is you think an insult is automatically an ad hominem, but he's even worse than that. He just like throws out names of like, you committed bandwagon, ad hominem, genetic foul. Like, you're just listing fallacies you Googled, right? Like, you don't actually know what these mean, obviously.
yeah, and that's I've been noticing an uptick in that with with some of the atheists, right? Some of the angry atheists. You've got total cool atheists who don't care a lot about what people believe as long as you're not trying to kill them and so on. And then you've got the aggressive ones. But it reminds that same thing. You see it from certain Dawa guys, and you see it from people like rationality rules. Well, that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy. That's a fallacy. And the assumption is if the person saying something I disagree with, there must be a fallacy in there. So let me pick a fallacy and say he's committed the fallacy, which, I mean, I said this in my response to rationality rules. I said, dude, walk into any philosophy department on the planet. It doesn't matter if they're all atheists. Show them your video pointing out all these fallacies, then show them my video and ask them to rate your skills in logic. Ask them to rate your skills. I guarantee they would give him a 2. They would give him a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. They would give him a 2, and the only reason they wouldn't give him a 1 is because he at least knows the names of some of the fallacies. The application, it's I have to say seriously, and there can be Christians who do this too, but I have to say seriously to any of the atheists who are following that route, where if you're trying to respond to something, just call it a fallacy, even if it makes no sense, to someone who's actually studied logic, but your followers haven't studied logic, and so they think you're pointing out fallacies that people have actually committed. Guys, that is not the purpose of logic. The purpose of logic is not to smack down any argument you disagree with. It's to actually find legitimate flaws in arguments. And you're not doing that if you just blurt out some fallacy that you Googled because you don't know how to respond to what someone is saying. It's pathetic. Stop it. It's a joke. You look stupid. You sound stupid. You may sound smart to your followers. You sound like idiots to any educated person. All right, let's see if we've got some super chats built up here. Let's go ahead and knock these super chats out. And then we're gonna go through some of Muslim Cowboy's tweets. We got a couple videos by him. And the real reason we love guys like the Muslim Cowboy, they just open the doors. They open the doors. He'll say things like, Muhammad's the greatest man ever. His moral character was perfect. And it's like, okay, you just handed us an opportunity to ask you what you think about some of the issues with Muhammad. And they just keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah. If anybody wants a good book on fallacies and how to understand them, this is a good book, Bad Arguments, 100 of the Most Important Fallacies in Western Philosophy. It's a very good book and explains them well, just in case anyone's interested.
Indeed. Lots of good books. Lots of good websites. Just don't learn logic from guys who just weaponize it to attack anything they disagree with, because then
Mm-hmm.
you come across like an idiot, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Kuna here. David, you were mentioned in numerous hadiths. Dawood has da for David and wood for wood. You see, you
You
are a prophet
see?
indeed. And as stupid as that sounds, that's about the level of argumentation for Muhammad in the Bible. So draw your own conclusions.
It's pretty much. I need to go through that new book, Abraham, What Fulfilled. I've already seen some pretty bad things about it. I might go through it and do a stream on it eventually if I have the time. But yeah,
Oh, we should
I want to
we
get that.
should we should collaborate. Go channel to channel. Go through the whole thing. Michael Brown has even said he'll jump in for some of it if we need something on the Hebrew and stuff. So
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I need to get a copy and read it. Yeah.
yeah, we should because notice what they've done. This is what Dawa does. They simply try to kind of overwhelm you, right? Like, here's our
Mm-hmm.
argument for Muhammad in the Bible. Okay, we refute that. Oh, here's Muhammad in the Bible, and we refute that. We do that for a while, and then they'll but according to this study and that study, so they try the Daniel Hakikachu approach, right? Oh, but this study has shown this, and this study and this commentary over here, and they'll try to build a case knowing that most people are not going to go read all those sources and stuff. And now let's put together this giant book that our critics are not going to take the time to read. And that's how we'll deceive people into thinking that we have a good case for Muhammad in the Bible. It's pathetic, but you just kind of, I've told people before, you just have to be relentless. They try to wear you down until you're just,
Mm-hmm.
I can't keep responding to this nonsense. You guys keep, and it's just amazing. It's like the Dawa guys, they lie about something, you expose it, and then they come up with a new lie, and then you expose it, and then they try to make the lie more elaborate, and they keep trying to make it like bigger and bigger and bigger until you just get sick of responding to it. And then you see it's so powerful, they won't respond to it. And it's like, no, you just have to be relentless. The bigger they get, you just have
Mm-hmm.
to keep doing it. But what's amazing is you could catch these guys in 50 different lies along the way. It never affects their followers. It just the followers just don't care. It's like their followers have
Yeah.
absorbed the idea. Yeah, these guys are deceivers. That's what they do. That's what our religion celebrates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, you seen this? I wasn't sent by the Jews. I was sent by Corn Pop. You see, it's the name Eli Ezra Copter. You seen the name Eli Copter?
Yeah. The helicopter. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that.
Eli Copter. Bala, this cowboy can wrangle me any day. That's from Goat Hub, the Muslim cowboy's favorite website. I'm surprised he's not advertising for it. Amazing Randy claimed in an interview he had a recording of Peter's wife saying racist things, but I don't think it ever got released.
Hmm.
You don't know about that? Yeah, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. The surprising part is that you can be recorded doing all that, scamming people, and just make a comeback like there's like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Now that AP is no longer a Muslim but an atheist, but an atheist apostate, D Wood fires him. You see, he was always a secret atheist. Yeah, so AP has downgraded his atheism to agnosticism. So good move in the right direction. Islam, death cult of the pedos by the pedos. Death cult of the pedos by the pedos for the pedos. Pretty rude.
Yeah.
You ever seen that clip by Oshi?
No,
The democracy one?
I don't think so. No.
You got to check that out one day. So he's this Indian guru, and he goes, democracy is the religion of the people, by the people, for the people. But the people are retarded. So it's the rule of belief of the people, of the retarded, by the retarded, for the retarded. Funny. Let's see. You feeling okay, Pete? You're looking a little pale.
Yeah, that happens.
He called him AP. Called you AP. Islam is falling victim to one of the classic blunders, the most famous of which is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never underestimate the fellowship of apostasy.
I mean, I would say one of the things about Islam is like, what does it have to offer people now? Like, it used to be like war, conquest, these kinds of things, plunder. They don't have that anymore. They don't have a caliphate. They're fighting amongst themselves. What I think Islam has to offer people is a brotherhood that will defend you until through anything. So it doesn't matter what you do, they will defend you from the kuffar as much as possible. But like, what does it offer in terms of intrinsic religiosity? In Christianity, you have the God of the universe dies for you to make you a true son of the king. Like, it offers like this deep loving relationship with God you can't get anywhere else, which is directly absent in Islam, by the way, because Allah is a father to no one, this kind of thing. So you have this deep moving thing that really like motivate, and historians have talked about this, like Tom Holland and others, Robert Woodbury. It really does motivate people to truly want to live a good life. But Islam is just like, hey, do good things, get virgins. It's just cosmic hedonism at the end of the day. And so like, what does it really have to offer people now that the Islamic golden age of conquest and plunder is over? Not much. So like, unless it's family tradition, if you want to like come into some sort of brotherhood, it doesn't really have something truly intrinsic in and of itself to offer, like you can see in like Christianity or Judaism being part of the covenant people, or even things like the Baha'i faith. Like there's but I mean, Islam really it's again, it's like get your 72 virgins, cosmic hedonism kind of stuff. It doesn't have the same cosmic story of the God of this world, the God of the universe becoming man and dying for you because he loves you so much. It doesn't have that kind of moving feature within it.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like a religion where someone goes to a bunch of 7th century Arabian people who follow warlords and says, "Hey, what are all your desires? I'm going to give you the perfect religion for you," and then just rolls with that. Even William Lane Craig is on Team AP now. Said it's over for France. Interesting. William Lane Craig said say it's over for France. That would be interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. For everyone who's watching, my view is not that it's over for France or that France is cooked. It's that you could have dealt with certain problems in Europe peacefully, but by ignoring them and pushing them off and ignoring them and leaving them to future generations to deal with, now you're running out of peaceful solutions to massive problems.
Yeah.
And so the inevitable bloodbaths, which no matter what you do, it looks like you're eventually going to get some bloodbaths over there to deal with some of these issues. It could have been avoided if you'd listened instead of silencing people. Have you seen the new Shake It Off video? Not yet. I will check that out though. Shake It Off has cool videos. If Muhammad was that kind of addict, then no wonder the Ottoman sultans took women from Central, Eastern, and Balkan Europe to be used for centuries. Yes, they did. That was all pattern of conduct. Zamzam Water, LLC. Solution to the conflict. Israel declares itself an Islamic state, then Muslims around the world would stop caring because 2 Islamic groups are fighting. That is true. If Israel declared itself the new Islamic state, there'd be no more complaining because it'd be, it's Muslims versus Muslims.
Yeah.
A bit off topic. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Jehovah's Witness translation of John 1:1c? Is there any good scholarship on this? You want to give a quick rundown there?
Yeah, so what they'll say is they'll translate it as, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was a God. No, that's not really accurate, because if you look at the grammar of what I believe it's John 1:18, like you're going to have a very similar. There's somebody, a friend of mine named Chip Bennett. We were at his church in March. He did some videos on this, and I believe they're still on TikTok. So you go to his TikTok page. He did like some replies to actually Dan McClellan on this, and argued that no, John 1:1 is best translated is the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And he's an expert on Greek. So check out stuff by Chip Bennett. He's got some good stuff. And I believe they're also on YouTube as well. But I know I've saw them on TikTok a while ago.
And Dan Wallace responded to that a long time ago. And he pointed out, he said, the most perfect way you could explain that Jesus is God and is distinct from the Father in the Greek is exactly what he did there. But I think what you have as far as like, I think people think that articles work exactly the same in Greek as they do in English, and you can run into some problems thinking like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm thinking about writing a book about the right to statehood and comparing the Palestinian case versus the Confederacy's case in the South to see which side was more legitimate. Thoughts? God bless.
It's out of my area.
Yeah, it would be a completely different situation. In the United States, you already had a country, you already had a nation, the United States of America, and then part of the country, certain states say we want to separate now on, and so you'd have to see how that lines up with the Palestinian case. It's not, hey, here's our country, and part of it is deciding to break away from the country. There wasn't a Palestinian country at all. That was a small territory of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was conquered because they allied with Germany in World War One. The Ottoman Empire was conquered. The land was then under the control of the French and the British. The British controlled what they called the Mandate of Palestine. They're just calling it the area that's what the Romans called it. There were not. That was
Hmm.
never. It wasn't a nation. So it's a small little part of the Roman. I mean, it's a small part of the Ottoman Empire. Then it's controlled by the British, and then after World War II, the British want to pull out of these places and divide the place up. The Jews had a pretty airtight case for saying, "Can you please not put us under the control of these people who already acknowledge that they want to exterminate us?" And the
Hmm.
British said, that makes perfect sense. So you take this little piece of land, they'll take this land, and then everything will work out. The surrounding Arab countries declared war on Israel the day it started, and they lost, So situations, but again, there was no country of Palestine, there was no country that people wanted to break off of and say, hey, we're something different here. It was a totally different situation. But I mean, notice you could write something about that and explain all that, and some other cases, and you do have other cases uh, that are not the same, but in the same ballpark, like India and Pakistan, right? That was all, it was very similar. The British are pulling out. They say, wait a minute, we can't leave all the Muslims under the control of Hindus. We can't leave these Hindus down here under the control of Muslims. What are we going to do? Let's divide the place up so that Hindus are in control over here, Muslims are in control over here, and hopefully that avoids the bloodbath. And it
Hmm.
didn't. It didn't. But some similar situations. Tips to start on YouTube. There are YouTube channels who won't debate a nobody like me. I like theology, polemics, apologetics, political, and philosophy of logic. Any quick insights there, IP?
Yeah, well, I totally understand. I mean, I'm not going to debate someone who doesn't have a following at this point because it's just not worth my audience time. I mean, I'm really trying to limit that as well in terms of channel size. Build up an audience first, then we can talk so that it's worth my audience's time, given the size of like my platform. And this is the tactic I got from Muhammad Ajab. He does the same thing. So if you think I'm not being fair to Muslims, that's what he does. So start doing shorts is what I would say, Ben. Do that. Do a lot of shorts because people go through shorts like they go through like channel surfing, and that's how people are going to find your stuff. Put some time in them, making them quality shorts. So get a good mic, edit them so you have cuts. You want a short that's going to like actually do a lot of jump cuts because those jump cuts keep people's attention. So don't just record yourself for 1 minute. Like record your like a segment, then another segment, then another segment. Do a bunch of those, and when you get some enough of an audience, around 1,000 subscribers, then start trying to do some live streams. You'll get like 2 or 3 people watching at first, but if you keep doing it regularly every week, you'll get more and more people. I'd say that's the path to go to start building up an audience.
Yeah, and I agree with IP. Yeah, yeah. People aren't going to, especially people with big followings, aren't going to want to debate someone who's new because it's kind of pointless. Like if you school, like if they don't know who you are and they crush you, well, we just crushed someone. No one knows who you are, uh, and so it's like what's the point? So yeah, you have to build up kind of a following first, but just keep in mind you don't have to get someone to agree to debate you to respond to their stuff. You can watch
Mhm.
someone's video that you want to respond to who isn't going to debate you. You can download that person's video, cut out the argument that you want to respond to, and make a video of you responding to that person's argument. And that is a good way. That is a good way to go on
Mhm.
YouTube. That is a good way to get started, responding to people's
Mhm.
stuff. Because now, even though you're not debating this person with the big channel, you're responding to the person with the big channel. And if you give a good response, then people who were wondering what the problem with that person's argument, well, wow, this guy's got a good argument, and then they start following you.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
A couple more here. David, now new Shake It Off video. Yeah, Best explanation of why people criticize Islam and why they should continue to. Very funny as well. I will check it out. Here's another one from the guy who just. My two favorite philosophizers. what
Mm.
what is both ends of correlation is not causation? I see many correlative things that do end up being a cause. So yeah, the problem, yeah, the correlation is not causation. It's just like if you step on a crack tomorrow and your mother breaks her back, 5 minutes later you don't say, "Oh, okay, step on a crack, break your mother's back." Those things are connected. There's a correlation. One happened right after the other. That doesn't mean that one thing caused the other. So yes, sometimes there's
Yeah.
correlation. Sometimes there's correlation and causation. These things are connected, and one caused the other. It's just the fallacy is when you're saying, "Oh, this thing came after this, therefore one thing caused the other." What are your thoughts on that,
No.
IP?
Well, a good example is that atheists like to say that, oh, it's in these secular nations in Europe, they're more tolerant, they're more open to other people. Well, that's correlative because when you actually do studies like Kenneth Vaughn has done and others, they actually find that in these countries, the more tolerant views are found among the religious people. And I cited these studies in my video, Is Christianity Harmful? If you want to go check that out, I cited a bunch. So you can see a correlation. Secular nations seem to be more tolerant of other people and other beliefs. However, when you look more into that, it's just correlative in terms of that because the actual positive associations align with religious individuals in these nations.
Indeed.
No.
Okay, but can IP give me an objective test to tell apart a 9-year-old girl from a woman whom Allah made look like a 9-year-old girl? Didn't think
You
so. So,
see?
so IP, how would you tell the difference between an actual 9-year-old girl and a grown woman that Allah has made to appear like a 9-year-old girl?
I,
The
I
answer is
couldn't because Allah is the best of deceivers.
that's right. Once you have an
Yeah.
omnipotent deceiver at your disposal, so much,
Anything is possible.
so much can be explained.
Yo,
Good.
yo, I'm looking at this book, Abraham Fulfilled. You know what we could do is I'm looking at the chapters. We could do like one live stream on chapter 1, then a live stream on chapter 2, maybe 2 on 3, but then like 1 on 4. We could do like a couple live streams and just go through like one chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can. Good analogy or no? People say don't boost in birth rates by having babies to help the Earth climate is like me saying to help your hunger, don't eat. So I guess the claim is a boost. People say
I don't know. I don't get
no.
it.
No, I get it. I'm just saying exactly what he means here. Don't boost in high birth rates by having babies to help the Earth climate is like me saying, oh, I think it's saying don't have babies because the problem it's going to have on the climate um, is like saying you've got a hunger problem, so don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the issue of claiming we shouldn't have babies because of the climate is just doesn't work like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in other words, people adapt to things. You can be concerned about the climate and the environment and things like that. Um, but the real problem is when you say hey, we need to stop having kids because we need to reduce the human population to take care of the environment. The real problem is there are certain groups that don't listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to keep having 8 kids, 10 kids in their families. And so they're going to outnumber you. And they might not even care about the environment, even slightly. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
basically, I find it interesting that people keep doing all this stuff that will ultimately destroy themselves. It's like feminism. Feminists has some good ideas, but if you go so far and hey, we're going to end up like destroying marriage and aborting all the babies and so on, well, guess what? Then other groups are having more kids and they're going to come in and dominate you, and there went your feminism. In other words, the feminists are destroying their ability to be feminist in the future. It just takes a little time. But it's the same way with this. Matter of fact, I was heading to Ethiopia, and the layover was in Germany. And so I'm sitting there in Germany waiting for the flight from Germany down to Ethiopia. And there was a group of a few women there, young women, and they were being sent by the U.S. government. They were being sent by the U.S. government to Ethiopia to convince Ethiopians to have fewer kids for the environment. Now, guess what? Those representatives, young women representing the U.S. government, they may be able to pull that off with some people. Hey, have fewer kids. Who is the one group that's never going to listen to these girls? Muslims.
Well, I'd say Muslims. I'd also say conservative Christians. There's people at my church that have like 12 kids or 5 kids. It's actually, pretty common.
Mm-hmm. But Muslims definitely not listening to these white Western girls tell them how to live their lives. And like what the husbands are going to be listening to these ladies and so on. So what
Yeah,
you
well,
what
I was going to say the global birth rate has actually dropped exponentially. It's now 2.1 birth per females.
Mhm.
So like it's almost below population replacement on a global level. So it's even declining in Muslim nations, actually.
Yeah, and that happens with modernization. Basically, as
Yeah.
as a place modernizes, and there are more opportunities for girls and women, then they don't get married off at 12 anymore. So they don't end up having 10 or 12 kids. You have girls who go to school and then go to college and so on, and or get jobs or careers and so on. And you're bringing in Muslims because they got the biggest birth rates.
Right.
And so you're ultimately destroying everything you set out to do.
Right.
I learned my logic from Mike Winger. It's a good thing that's a joke. No history of humanity learned, at least be upon him.
Get some help immediately, because a sex addict is someone who literally can't control themselves. Like they have no self-control when it comes to sex. And that's why they need psychiatric help. A lot of actual sex addicts, like if you were to leave them alone in a room with a woman, they would immediately start making advances and probably do stuff they shouldn't because they can't control themselves. It's like an alcoholic around alcohol. They're going to drink it. So sex addiction is very dangerous, not just for the person, but the women or the people around them that could be victims. So get help immediately.
Yeah, we've got some more super chats, but this is a good time to bring up some of the tweets. Right?
Yeah.
That's a perfect comment to bring up some of the tweets. So talking about sex addicts. And I made a video years ago that was just titled, it was one of my fun Islamic facts series. And one of them was just titled, Muhammad was a sex addict. And then but people who read certain passages in the hadiths about Muhammad, they say, look, this guy's a sex addict.
Mm-hmm.
And normally Muslims flip out. How dare you say something like that about Muhammad? But that wasn't Muslim Cowboy's reaction. So let's go through a couple tweets here from our guy. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we already went through some of these in a previous live stream with AP, but Muslim Cowboy has reacted to some of his feedback. And so we're going through these to bring everyone up to date on what the later stuff is about. So someone, Fear Please, said Muhammad was a sex addict and actually shared the hadith here, Sahih al-Bukhari 5068. The Prophet used to go around, have sexual relations with all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives. So Muhammad would have sex with 9 wives in one night. So let's suppose he's starting at like 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, he's banging one wife. 5:20, he's over there banging another wife. 5:40, he's out there banging another wife. 6 o'clock, right? And so the normal...
This is actually one of the things that make me think these are just myths. Like, this just sounds like a myth.
I think it's a myth, too. If it's true, then Muhammad had a problem. I've seen some people who try to explain Muhammad's, thinking that he's receiving revelations in terms of temporal lobe epilepsy and so on. And they pointed out that can be connected to, like, massively inflated sex drive. In other words, you can explain multiple things. I don't use that because I haven't studied it, and so I wouldn't actually know. But I've heard people point that out, that these things some of these problems can be connected. So if this, but here's the thing, from a Sunni Muslim historical perspective, this is as good as gold here, because you have multiple Sahih narrations in Islam's most trusted sources like Sahih al-Bukhari. And so from their method, this is as good as gold. For the rest of us who don't trust these things, could this be later Muslims who just are exalting Muhammad in every possible way, and they're saying, "Oh, he's this ultimate super giga Chad who'd bang all these wives in one night because he's so strong." Yeah, that could be made up. That could totally be made up. But for the Muslim cowboy, this can't be made up. But anyway, I just wanted to point out the normal Muslim response to this is, um, "Oh, come on, maybe he's not really having sex with all of them. Maybe he's just going around and messing around with them a little bit, not finishing." Or, but anyway, they'll come up with different possible meanings. It's pretty. If you read these passages, it's pretty clear what these passages are saying, because his followers are bragging and boasting about what a powerful what a sexual powerhouse
Oh
Muhammad
boy,
was.
yeah. Who
Yeah,
cares? Like, who cares? Like, if you think that's a good argument for Islam, there's something wrong with you. Like, who cares?
yeah. You see, so powerful. He
Oh,
boned. Anyway, well, what's crazy, IP, is there's a passage in the Hadith where Muhammad says that Solomon would sleep with 90 women in a single day. 90. And in that passage, and this is why you can't really say, as a Muslim, from a Muslim historical perspective, you have to grant that these are Sahih narrations, and so you can't get away from them. But for Muslims who would say, "Oh, this isn't really saying he's going to finish having sex with them," no, the parallel passage is Muhammad says that Solomon was even more powerful, and Solomon had sex with 90 wives in a night, and Solomon said, "I'm going to get all of them pregnant." So he was actually talking about like finishing the deed with 90 different women in a single night. If he's talking about impregnating them, then he's not just fooling around with them. It's not just foreplay or something like that. He's actually completing the act. And
uh-huh.
so the correct response from an Islamic perspective is exactly what the Muslim cowboy does. Notice what he says. He says, "I am too, and it's righteous. Plus, we get rewarded for having sex." Yeah, yeah. That's his response. So instead of denying it or saying, "Hey, stop insulting Muhammad," he just says, "Yes, I am too. I am too
And
what?
you gotta
Sex
think
addict."
about this. Like, clearly, this first guy, Fear Please, was not using this as a compliment.
Yeah, I know.
So the Muslim cowboy agrees, with this clearly an insult, and somehow thinks that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly the guy was not using sex addict in a positive light,
Yeah.
which is what I got, which is when I quote tweeted this.
Yeah, that would be like sharing one of the passages about Aisha and going, "Muhammad was a pedophile." Muslim cowboy going, "I am too, and it's righteous. Plus, we get rewarded for banging little girls." Yeehaw! Which is exactly what he says. He's just still under the delusion that somehow these aren't children, when his own sources
Uh-huh.
call them children. His own sources call them children. No, she's a woman. That's not what it says. That's not what it says. It says she's a child. It says she's prepubescent. Your own sources specify. Matter of fact, we'll go ahead and look at one or two. But your own sources specify and call her child and call them children and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he posted this. "I am too, and it's righteous. I am too what? I am a sex addict." So when he says "I am too," that's also. So he's a sex addict, and who else is? Muhammad.
Muhammad.
He granted that Muhammad was a sex addict. Muhammad was addicted to sex. And so you responded, "So, Merciful Message admits his prophet suffered from a mental health disorder, and he thinks this is a good thing. Hide your daughters." Good comment. Hide your daughters. Hide your little girls. Hide them all. Keep them
Seriously.
away from this. Because, guys, keep in mind what IP pointed out, like, a sex addict cannot control himself. So, literally, hide your daughters from someone who brags about being a sex addict, especially a sex addict who thinks that a 9-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl, a 5-year-old girl, they're all fair game for sex. Keep your
Yeah.
daughters away from someone like this, period. But
Listen, yeah. I mean, these guys think they should conquer the world. Imagine what they would do to the girls around the world if they had the power they think they deserve. Let's think about that for a minute. Do you really like? I can't understand liberals on board with like trying to like make an alliance with Muslims and Islam. Like, think about what they would do to little girls if they got the power they think they deserve.
indeed. Wait, I see someone responding to They're pointing out that Sahih Muslim says that Aisha was 18 when Muhammad died. Is someone trying to argue that Aisha wasn't 9 when Muhammad had sex with her?
Oh God, not
Oh
this.
my goodness. Yeah, it's D.A. Nubs says no. Sahih Hadith say Aisha was 18 explicitly. You have to add ages of different events together to get 18. Yeah, give us the explicit. God, hey, duh nubs. We've been through those articles a trillion times. They all lie. They're
Yeah.
all deceptive.
Mm-hmm.
Show us a hadith. Give us a reference. And you know how this works? You say, Sahih Muslim, number such and such, says that she was 18. Here you're saying, oh, you have to put it all together. You can't put it all together. It doesn't work. It's nonsense. And all the sources that you would use to try and put together an older age, all those sources specifically say she was 9 years old. Matter of fact, we'll take a glance here in a moment, right after we check out these.
Well,
We
he had to, the Muslim cowboy had to respond to me because he was,
yeah.
you know.
Here we go. Ready? So inspiring philosophy says, no, notice what he does. When someone says so-and-so's a sex addict, you're saying that person has a mental disorder, has a problem. And Muslim cowboy said, yeah, and so do I. Yeehaw. And inspiring philosophy says, so you admit it. You admit that you admit that your prophet had a mental health disorder, and you think it's a good thing. Okay, hide your daughters. And then we get the response from the Muslim cowboy. For someone who specializes in fallacies, you've resorted to equivocation. Equivocation by conflating the colloquial notion of sex addict with its clinical diagnosis. Me and AP looked at this the other day, and people were like, did this guy grab a thesaurus and try to pick out words to sound smart?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, guys. So equivocation is when you change the meaning of a word in the course of giving an argument and so on. And
well,
so
it's specifically, it's like if a word has two meanings and you use one in one sense and then switch it to the other one. So, like, you know, it's like if you, a common example is like I saw a sign that said "fine for parking," so I parked there because it was fine. Notice I switched between like a penalty and, you know, just the colloquial sense of it being fine. The Muslim cowboy thinks there's a colloquial sense of sex addict. Like, okay, buddy.
Yeah. So anyway, it's clear how the phrase was being used by the person who accused Muhammad of being a sex addict. And then Muslim cowboy agrees, yeah, it's true. And then IP points out, okay, you just admitted it. He says, no, you've committed equivocation. Says my use of the term was in the context of masculinity. So it's just a masculine thing. If you're a man, if you're a masculine dude, if you're a manly man, then you're a sex addict. Not just saying, guys, it's not just saying you like sex. Not just saying you like sex. Me and IP can confirm we like sex. If you say that someone is a sex addict, then that's something else. My use of the term was in the context of masculinity, not pathology. Your attempt to discredit based on this semantic shift lacks logical integrity, as usual. So you're known for this. Instead of focusing on substantive arguments rather than linguistic gymnastics, uninspiring philosophy again leaves me wanting for, well, more effort.
This is like this is ridiculous. There is no definition of a sex addict where that's a positive masculine good thing. This is an ad hoc rescue. It's funny he's accusing me of a fallacy when he's committing one. This is just an ad hoc rescue. He just makes up another definition on the fly and pretends this is a real definition. There isn't. I've never seen the phrase sex addict used in a positive light, let alone to refer to someone as masculine. I have only ever seen the term used in a clinical sense of someone who is like an alcoholic. Okay. What is he talking about here? He's clearly just making things up and pretending that I'm the one with the logical problem.
Yeah. So that would actually be a good comparison. The word alcoholic, right?
Right.
IP likes whiskey. IP likes
Sure do.
whiskey. And suppose someone said, hey, IP likes whiskey. He's an alcoholic. And then IP said, you're darn right I am. You see, I'm so strong. I am an alcoholic. And then someone says, hey, he just admitted he's an alcoholic. And he goes, no, I was just saying I'm a man. I'm a masculine man who likes his alcohol. You see, that's all I was saying. Oh, my goodness, you're committing the fallacy. You're committing equivocation. by changing the meaning. I was just saying, look how manly I am drinking my whiskey. And you're saying it's an actual problem, that alcoholism is a problem. That would be stupid. That would be a stupid response.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's exactly what we get from the Muslim cowboy. Anyway, so we had that response. We had that from the Muslim cowboy. And again, me and AP looked at that the other day, and people thought it was stupid and hilarious. But the Muslim cowboy has given about as close to an apology as we'd get from someone like that.
Yeah.
But since then, he has responded with this. With this. While I often take a non-apologetic stance when confronting enemies of Islam, I sometimes fail to follow up with actual, authentic narrations to give a true representation of this perfect way and our perfect messenger. Thankfully, I have great people around me to remind me. So people complained, his followers complained, dude,
Mm-hmm.
you just called Muhammad a sex addict. You just said, yes, he's a sex addict. And then you tried to weasel your way out of it like a sniveling coward. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing calling Muhammad a sex addict? So then he, Muslim cowboy, said, "Up, yeah, I should have represented Muhammad and his perfect way, as Muhammad is the perfect messenger." Notice the words here, because we're going to look at some of this, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to see whether Muhammad was indeed the perfect messenger.
This is the closest you're going to get to an apology. He doesn't even say, I was wrong to call Muhammad a sex addict. So in the future, he says anything remotely like this, I'm just going to ask him, do you still think Muhammad's a sex addict? Do you admit you were wrong? So someone go ask the Muslim cowboy now on Twitter. Are you walking back on your claim that Muhammad is a sex addict? Do you admit that was wrong? Because I hardly, and I mean hardly ever see the Da'i ever admit they were wrong. They just double down or they pretend they never said it. Occasionally I'll get something here or there, but it's usually like a backhanded kind of way to get out of it. And so is he actually admitting it? He really needs to just come out and say, I was wrong to call Muhammad a sex addict. Until then, we should keep bothering him on it.
And you'd think that he would, right? I mean, you think, okay,
Yeah.
again,
Oh yeah.
this would be like calling someone who, if you don't mean that someone is an alcoholic, you just mean he drinks, you shouldn't be calling the person an alcoholic or agreeing that the person is an alcoholic. You shouldn't be doing that. And you can't accuse. And if you agree that so and so is an alcoholic, and then someone points out, wow, you just called this man an alcoholic. Hide your beer from that guy. You don't blame the person and say, well, yeah, you're committing a fallacy there. You don't do that. If you've agreed that so and so is an alcoholic, then you've agreed to it. But that's what our good friend the Muslim cowboy does here. He Muhammad's called a sex addict. Muslim cowboy agrees that Muhammad is a sex addict. You pointed out, and he accuses you of committing a fallacy. His followers point out that he shouldn't have said that because why? Because his followers also understand how the term sex addict is used. And so he listens to his followers. That's actually it's actually good that he's listening in some sense. It's good that he's
Yeah.
listening in some sense. You just wish that he was listening a bit more carefully. But IP, you've got this claim here. That Muhammad was perfect, our perfect messenger. It's
Oh
the
boy.
perfect way of life. The perfect way of life. 1 second, I'm about to pull up source. We'll call this Muhammad the sinner. Muhammad the sinner. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Do you view Muhammad as the perfect messenger? And if not, why not?
Oh, where do I begin? Well, anyone who basically commits statutory rape with a 9-year-old is not perfect, is nowhere near perfect, can never be said to be perfect. That should be the end of the debate right there. Anyone who engages in polygamy is not perfect because polygamy is harmful to women and children. And yes, I will directly say that the patriarchs in the Old Testament were not perfect. And when they engaged in polygamy, that was sinful and wrong and harmful because we don't have this Islamic idea that all of the past prophets or patriarchs were protected from major sins like they do in Islam. So yeah, it's wrong to do that kind of stuff. It's wrong to trade slaves like Muhammad did. It's wrong to attack caravans in the middle of the night like Muhammad did. Where do I end this? There's so many ways you can point out Muhammad did horrible things.
And here's an interesting one for someone who's calling Muhammad perfect. So the Muslim cowboy just called Muhammad perfect, right? You saw that, right? It's on the screen, right?
Uh-huh.
We're all on the same page. We all agree that the Muslim cowboy has called Muhammad perfect.
Ugh.
Okay. Here are a couple Quran verses. Surah 40, verse 55. Then have patience, O Muhammad. Lo, the promise of Allah is true. And ask forgiveness of thy sin, and in him the praise of thy Lord, at fall of night and in the early hours. So Muhammad is told to ask forgiveness of his sin. 47:19. So know, Muhammad, that there is no God save Allah, and ask forgiveness for thy sin and for believing men and believing women. Allah knoweth both your place of turmoil and your place of rest. Once again, Muhammad is told to ask forgiveness of his sin and of the sins of his followers. 48,
Mm-hmm.
Surah 48, 1-2. Lo, we have given thee, O Muhammad, a signal victory, that Allah may forgive thee of thy sin, that which is past and that which is to come, so sins of his past and sins of the future, and may perfect his favor unto thee, and may guide thee on a straight path. So here is Allah repeatedly calling Muhammad a sinner, telling Muhammad to repent of his sins. And there are hadiths that say Muhammad would repent of his sins, would seek forgiveness of Allah for his sins 70 times a day. If someone is asking for forgiveness of his sins 70 times a day and is repeatedly told to ask forgiveness of his sins, IP, can we call this person perfect?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like this is someone we would call perfect. And what's amazing is he's calling Muhammad perfect when, according to the Quran and the Hadith, Muhammad wasn't perfect. According to Allah and Muhammad, Muhammad wasn't perfect. So according to Muhammad himself, Muhammad was perfect. And yet, the Muslim cowboy says Muhammad was perfect. What is this in Islam, ladies and gentlemen? What is this called? When Allah and Muhammad say one thing, and yet you've kind of changed what Islam teaches and given it your own spin. Who knows what this is called? Give people a couple seconds because there's a slight delay. But tell us, what's that called? When Allah and Muhammad say one thing and you come along and say, here's what's actually the case. Here's what's actually the case in my religion. Muhammad was perfect. Muhammad was perfect. When the Quran and the Hadith say Muhammad was a sinner, definitely not perfect. Now, what's interesting about this is that in Islam, there is someone who's perfect. There is someone who's perfect, and that is Jesus. Jesus is the one who's perfect in Islam. Jesus is the one who's perfect in Islam. He's perfect in the Quran. He's called faultless or blameless, whereas Muhammad is not. Muhammad's a sinner. And in the Hadith, it said that Satan touches every child born into the world, except Jesus. He couldn't touch Jesus. And we have people here in the comments pointing out innovation. I asked what it's called. People are saying innovation, shirk, hypocrisy, sin. Yeah, you could call it all kinds of things. You can call it all that. But yeah, the term I was going for was innovation. You're inventing something as you go along. And it's just amazing because Muhammad said in the Hadith, every innovator goes to hell. Every innovator goes to hell. Yeah, we have bid'ah. That's the Arab bid'ah. That's the Muslim term for innovation. So the Muslim cowboy is an innovator. His religion says that Muhammad is a flawed sinner. Muslim cowboy says, no, the Quran and the Hadith are wrong. Muhammad was perfect. He's just a perfect guy.
This is the second problem we got from the Muslim cowboy, because earlier this week he said Muhammad is the way, the truth, and the life.
Oh yeah,
giving actual titles that are names of Allah to Muhammad, because only Allah in Islam is called the truth or the living. And he said these are actual names of Muhammad. So that's shirk. Now we've got innovation. The Muslim cowboy is not doing well if he thinks he's going to make it to heaven.
Yeah, let's. So I wanted to go and look through some passages to see if Muhammad is actually perfect. So I just want to toss those Quran verses up there just to point out that Allah Himself says Muhammad's not perfect. He tells Muhammad, "Hey, you mess up, man. You need to repent of your stuff." So he's not perfect according to that. But yeah, so we want to look at some sources and decide if these sources accurately describe what we would think of as a perfect man. But IP, since you brought it up, let's go ahead and pull this up. The way, the truth, and life, because it's kind of connected. So he says that Muhammad was perfect. And here we have the Muslim cowboy saying Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life. No one, and I mean no one, could get to God except through him. But now, Muhammad is the way, the truth, and the life. No one, absolutely no one, can get to God except through him.
680 likes, ladies and gentlemen.
That Muhammad is the way, the truth, and the life. And we've pointed out that these are either direct or versions of names of Allah. So the way is Al-Hadi. That's one of Allah's 99 names. The truth, that's Al-Haq. That he's the truth. There was a Muslim once who was killed. It was a Sufi Muslim who stepped out and said, I am the truth. And they executed him for taking one of the names of Allah. And here's a Muslim cowboy saying that Muhammad is the way, the truth, and the life. So you can actually call Muhammad names of Allah. Now, this is amazing. Can you call them all 99 names? Or are there certain names that are there some of the names that you can use for Muhammad and others you can't? And then, of course, the life, one of Allah's 99 names is the living. So the life is we'll say is pretty close to that. But you have names of Allah, and the Muslim cowboy is applying them to both Jesus and to Muhammad, and doesn't understand what the problem is. What's the problem? What problems do you see here? Because you pointed this out.
Well, I mean, this is Jesus in John 14:6 declaring his divinity when he says he's the way, the truth, and the life. I mean, to be the truth is to be the life, is to be the source of these things. Jesus says this about himself. Moreover, Jesus adds to the verse, no one comes to the Father except through me. Okay, this is basically saying you can't have salvation outside of believing in him. We see in John 8 that Jesus, says something similar. He says, unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins. So we have to believe in his divinity in order to get to heaven. And Jesus, adds more context here and says, again, titles that are clearly pointing to divinity, especially if you take Islamic theology, because again, only Allah is the truth, the way, and the living. Jesus says that's him. So Jesus in John 14 will be declaring himself to be God, or in Arabic, Allah. Okay, that's clearly a claim to divinity. There's no way to get around this. This is why even very skeptical scholars will note that the Gospel of John has such a high Christology.
Yeah, so it's just amazing. From a Christian, in a Christian context, it's clear what Jesus is saying there. And it's right after this where Jesus says, anyone who's seen me has seen the Father, which he distinguishes between himself and the Father. So the only way that makes sense is saying that he has the same nature and attributes as the Father. In other words, like saying if you had a twin and someone says, "Oh, I've never seen your twin," you go, "Well, if you've seen me, you've seen my twin." In other words, we look the same. So for Jesus to be saying something like that, and especially since Jesus said the Father, which Allah's a father to no one in the Quran. So from a Christian perspective, the Muslim cowboy has just committed shirk and deified Muhammad by calling him the way, the truth, and the life. But from an Islamic perspective, giving Muhammad and Jesus the titles, the names of Allah, would be shirk. So he's so the Muslim cowboy already, in just a couple tweets we've gone through, is guilty of innovation and shirk. And this is just some wild, wild stuff. Ridvan, so AP pointed out, congratulations with this post. You have left Islam and created a new religion where Muhammad is God. Calling Jesus the truth and the life is an acknowledgement that he is divine, which is a Christian belief. In your attempt to catch Christians, you have committed shirk. Indeed. And why? Why does AP know more about what these titles would mean in Islam than Muslim Dawah guys? This is wild stuff. All right. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, matter of fact, let's take a couple more super chats, and then we're going to see whether Muhammad was perfect. So the Muslim cowboy said Muhammad was perfect. We're going to take a look at some
He,
passages. We'll actually pull up
he's so
passages.
perfect. He's the
We'll
most
pull up
perfect
passages.
pedophile that ever existed.
And since our good friend, what was that guy's name? What was that Muslim's name? Don Nubs. Since he was saying that no, Muhammad was not. He was not 54 when he had sex with a 9-year-old. The girl wasn't 9. That's not how ages work. Where the ages for Muhammad are off. The ages for Aisha are off. It's all off. If you take a closer look, you'll see she was much older. Yeah, we'll go ahead and, since we had that polite request,
Mm-hmm.
we'll pull up some of those passages as well. All right, a couple super chats here. You expect me to take a guy named IP seriously? He's jelly because Muhammad is the greatest Trekkie ever, while he can't even tell a tractor beam from a phaser. Oh, that is some
Right.
straight.
I'm not a geek. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, but all Mike Wingeling's all the Wingelings know. D. Wood, you always discuss how bad apostasy and dawah is now. Where do you expect things to be in 5 to 10 years? Thanks for your work. Your apostasy speeches give me hope. Yes, I think it's going to be significantly worse. I think you're going to be hitting apostasy rates of like 40 and 50%. And I think it's massively going to accelerate. People don't understand when you see all this chest thumping right now and all this rallying for Gaza and so on. It's a bigger issue to them. It's a sign of strength if they can actually get their way. And this is brought up when Muhammad Hijab years ago asked Muslims what causes them doubts, what causes doubts in Muslims. The number one answer was moral problems with Muhammad. That was the number one issue, which is why it's so great that they're all defending these issues now instead of calling us liars. But another huge issue for Muslims is, why is the Muslim world so weak? If we're supposed to dominate the world, why are we so weak? Why can a tiny little nation like Israel just manhandle the entire Muslim population of the world? There's nothing we can do about it. Why? Why are Western nations so much more powerful than us? Why do we have to go groveling and say, can you let us in? Because we don't like our own countries. Why? Why are we so weak like this? Well, guess what? If Israel finishes the job, completely wipes out Hamas, and then whatever's going to happen in Gaza, it's going to be under some sort of control. Either Israel's going to maintain control. I suspect they'll give control over to some other governing body to keep something like Hamas from reforming. Something's going to go on. But notice Muslims are trying everything around the world. They're uniting with everyone, even people they want to kill, LGBTQ and stuff. They're uniting with all this stuff. They're uniting with communists, Marxists, all this stuff. Antifa, throwing tantrums. Why? They understand if they literally cannot stop Israel no matter what it does. And Israel can go through all of Gaza, completely crush every terrorist there. And if there's nothing the entire Ummah, 2 billion, you're talking 2 billion people. If there's nothing they can do against 7 million Jews in Israel, they understand this is going to have a big psychological impact on Muslims. Why are we so weak? How are we supposed to dominate the world when we're so weak and we just keep getting weaker? And so they understand this look bad. This is kind of like a last stand. They're not going to be able to claim to be, they're not going to be able to thump their chest. We're so strong anymore after this. You can't do it anymore. So they're in panic mode, not looking good for them. I think you're going to get some massive escalations of the apostasy rates.
I think you're going to get some effects coming out of Iran too, because Iran is becoming more and more secular every year. The Muslim population is decreasing there, and Iran is supposed to be a powerhouse of the Muslim world, even though it's Shia. And if that collapses into more of a secular nation, that's going to again look bad for Islam.
Yeah, and the population there is already ready. 40% of the people of Iran still consider themselves a Muslim of one variety or another. That's counting Shias, Sunnis, and Sufis all together make up around 40% of the population. Iran is a Muslim minority country that is being where the government is simply oppressing the people and killing them or locking them up for disagreeing. So they're in a really bad state. It's not going to last. The government of Iran is going to collapse. It's going to happen. Just, is it going to happen like 2 months from now or 5 years from now? But yeah, that's not going to. And you see Saudi Arabia is modernizing. Saudi Arabia is modernizing. They have Iggy Azalea twerking on stage now in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. They have bikini beaches now. They allow alcohol now in Riyadh. They're not going to be considered hardline And that's the heart of the Muslim world. That's Saudi Arabia. So not looking good for people who think that they're going to turn this apostasy rate around.
No.
Jesus said pagans worship in vain repetition. Muslims worship in vain repetition. You see proof the Bible is corrupted. That is the proof. It's funny. I was on a trip with Nabil when he was still a Muslim. This may have been the last trip we actually took. And it's last trip we took when we were still in college and he was still a Muslim. But I just started reading the Sermon on the Mount to him. And I read you get to the parts about fasting and not doing your fasting for show, and when you pray, don't pray to be seen by others, and so on. And so I'm just reading, and he goes, "So wait, what do you mean by that? What did he mean by that?" And I go, "Do you mean is that about you too? Because that's what you do." So it was actually fun. It was actually fun. But yeah, Jesus said a lot of. It's like everything in Islam is for show. Look at me, I'm out here in the street. Look at me, I'm out here in the street praying. Look at me, I'm fasting, everyone. I'm fasting. Let's all get together and fast. Look at me, I'm fasting. Look at everything I'm doing. And that's exactly what Jesus repeatedly condemns.
Exactly.
Everything for show. Hey, love your work. I just have a question that was brought up to me about King Ahaziah's age in the Book of Kings and Chronicles, age discrepancy. You've been through that, right?
Yeah, well, I think my friend Testify has a video on that. Let me just double check. He's got a lot of good stuff. Yeah, there's a viral TikTok Muslim finds Bible contradiction is the name of his video, and it's on the channel Testify. So check that out. He's got a good response to that.
Yeah, and if someone can share the link there, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's like 4 minutes long, so he debunks that pretty quickly. So.
Islam, come for the male superiority, stay for the apostasy laws. Don't lose your head. That is Islam. Trick people into coming in and then tell them you can't leave. You check in, but you don't check out. The only religion that is basically like one of those old roach motels. The last Shake It Off video is 100. There are a lot of people recommending that video. So yeah, I'll be checking that out. I'm disappointed with Jordan B. Peterson recently after he said his new series is going to be on Islam. He said something like, I need to take a better look at Islam now, eh? That I know the eyes are the leather straps of the anus, bucko. Yeah, sad. It does suck that he said that. Finna do with IP voice a 5-year-old.
What?
Oh, Muslim cowboy finna do it with a 5-year-old. Oh, yeah. He's saying say the 5-year-old like you. 5-year-old. That's how you say it in that famous Daniel Hagikachu clip. Remember? What about a 5-year-old? Remember that? So he's saying,
yeah.
Muslim cowboy finna do it with a 5-year-old. Any more book suggestions for learning about logic fallacies, argument analysis? I want to start exploring oppositional literature, atheist, Muslim, etc., without accidentally falling prey to faulty logic. It's pretty good. I mean, you can get a textbook. I mean, there are websites where you can learn logic. I mean,
well, check out that book I offered, Bad Arguments. I mentioned it earlier. It's a good place to start learning what fallacies are and how to use them. And once you understand what fallacies are, you'll understand what they're not, and therefore you'll understand logic better.
Yeah, and I learned from a book called Logic and Philosophy by William Brenner, who was actually my professor when we were going through that book. But yeah, there are textbooks on it. There are textbooks that are made for kind of people who are going into philosophy. There are books that are made for a more popular audience. There are websites, there are videos. So yeah, hey, IP eventually got to just put together an entire series on logical fallacies with examples from atheists and Muslims. And even from Christians.
Muslims, we got so many. Muslims, you can use so many examples.
I watched IP and I'm still Muslim. You see, you've increased his iman. Studying Exodus, and I wrote notes on the prohibition of animal relations, and it's legal in a lot of the world. 2 leaders are Afghanistan and Pakistan. Nasty. Ugh. Yeah, Pakistan, that poll that came out years ago, was the world leader in Google searches for various forms of animal porn. So, Dawa has clearly had a huge impact there. Assuming an eighth night, Muhammad did the assuming an 8-hour night, Muhammad did the needful with a full woman out of 12 wives every 40 minutes, yet only had 7 kids. What explains this if not Allah? Well, and keep in mind the 6 of his kids were all with Khadijah. So, and Khadijah, according to Muslim sources, was 40 years old. She was 40 years old when they married. And so she had all these kids after 40. There's something really off about the timeline. But you'd have to say at that point, Muhammad is shooting straight fire if he's just impregnating Khadijah over and over again. And then when he has 9 different wives, he didn't get any of his other wives pregnant. He didn't get any of his 9 wives pregnant. The only time he impregnated anyone after that was Mary the Copt. So that was his sex slave. And that child died as a baby. So I think Ibrahim was 2 years old. So that was his son with Mary the Copt. But yeah, there's something really off about this stuff, right? That Muhammad goes from being able to impregnate a 45, 46, 47-year-old woman just by looking at her. And then he has all these wives that he's banging constantly and, having sex with a bunch of one. And he's just totally shooting blanks. Until he goes with his sex, I don't know. There's something pretty weird about the Muslim sources.
It's like as Joshua Little points out, all these hadiths are probably unreliable nonsense that came about 100 years later. I mean, it's like assuming the Gnostic Gospels have any reliable information about Jesus. And some of those are closer to the life of Jesus than the collections of the hadiths are to Muhammad. This is just how, the critical scholarship for Islam is going to destroy it once they realize how unreliable these sources are.
Yeah, and that's interesting because as you point out, and as Joshua Little has pointed out that you've had lots of non-Muslims in Quran studies for a while. Non-Muslims in Hadith studies is pretty new and pretty rare. He points out that if you as a non-Muslim want to go into the field of Quran studies, this is actually a field where you can read everything that's been written on an issue because there's so little that's been written on it. But yeah, the non-Muslim scholars of Hadith, they think the Hadiths are just a joke. It's one big giant joke. The entire Muslim methodology of history is one giant joke. And so, yeah, you're right. As that starts catching on, because keep in mind, I mean, the basis for the hugely embarrassing holes in the narrative interview with Sheikh Yasser Qadi, when Yasser Qadi's explaining, he's like, hey, we as Muslims, we don't question these issues. Or if we do, then whatever response someone gives, we just say, okay, that's fine. And then we move on. He goes, the non-Muslims aren't like that. They just keep pushing. They go, no, that doesn't work. And he says, and we know they're right. We know they're right because they're quoting our sources to us, so showing that this doesn't work. So what's he saying? He's saying, we Muslims, we just accept these things are reliable until non-Muslims keep blasting away at us and they're pushing us and we realize we can't defend our position. Well, guess what? That's going to happen with the hadiths as well. So Islam's in all kinds of, and guys, keep in mind, it's all these things working together, like with the weakness of the ummah, with Muslims rallying around like dawah guys who are compulsive liars and just complete clowns. And they're thinking these guys are going to rescue them. They're clinging to people like Andrew Tate and Sneeko. Rescue us, Sneeko. Sneeko will save our religion. Andrew Tate, he's the top G. He'll save our religion. And meanwhile, the non-Muslim academics are blasting away at the foundations of Islam, the Quran, and the Hadith.
And they'll try whataboutism because they'll say it's going to happen to Christianity first. Let me remind you guys, some of the guys, critical scholarship on the Bible and Christianity has been around for over 100 years, and we are still here fighting and getting even better arguments. There's a study, David, you're going to love this. There's a study coming out this summer that I got contacted about a few months ago to do a short video on, like introducing it. That'll be published in June. This study is like the first scientific mathematical analysis on the Gospels. They went through the names in the Gospels and compared it to the actual statistics of names from the first century and basically show very strong evidence the Gospels have to basically be handed down eyewitness accounts because you couldn't get the naming pattern in the Gospels if you were writing fiction or writing years later and not actually getting information from eyewitnesses. So this is going to be a remarkable study that's going to have a lot of strong evidence for Christianity and the claims we see in the Gospels. That's coming out this summer. So as the years go by, the evidence for Christianity is getting stronger, and we've been fighting against critical scholarship for a while, and we're still here live and kicking. This is very new for Islam. It already doesn't look good. There's already really bad warning signs for them in there. So, and as G.K. Chesterton said, Christianity has died many times before. It's hard to kill a religion that has the power of resurrection.
Mm-hmm. And it is awesome because what happens in Christianity is the critical scholars push, and that sort of wakes Christians up that, oh, we have to go look into this. And then they go and they find responses and then they respond. And I mean, it's just like you can go back and have people saying resurrection developed as a legend over many decades and stuff. And what happens? We can eventually refute the critical scholars by appealing to the critical scholars when they start pointing, that 1 Corinthians 15 creed is actually you can take that to within about 2 years of the life of Jesus. And like, okay, resurrection appearances, death, burial, resurrection, all right there within 2 years of Jesus' death. So it's not a later development. And so people come along and they come up with these criticisms, and we dig deeper, and we eventually can refute those objections. In Islam, it's not like that. It's just nope. If you've propped up your religion based on lies, then when people come along and expose the lies, you can delay it for a while by coming up with more lies. We'll just lie some more. That's what the Dawa guys are doing right now. We'll just lie some more. Well, what about this? Well, we'll lie some more. Well, what about that? Well, we'll lie some more. Okay, if people keep coming after you and all you've got is lies, it's a matter of time. You're in trouble. You're in trouble. Oh, and as far as the point you were making right there, because that point's been that point's been made before, but it's just interesting as far as like you're reading the Bible and it's like, oh, and Mary showed up with the other Mary and that other Mary, and you're like, what's going on here? And you got, hey, here's the apostles and here's James and here's the other James, and it's like, if you were writing fiction, you'd come up with other names for these people. And so when you find same name used over and over and over again. And I think the point that IP is referring to there is you can actually go back and look up records and look up graves and stuff like this, and you can find out what's the percentage of the population that use this name and what's the percentage of the population that use that name and so on. You find out, oh, that's why there's all these Marys. It's the most common name there was back then, and every other girl you'd meet was named Mary. And why are there multiple Jameses? Oh, because that was a really common name and so on. And so
keep an eye on my channel. There's going to be a video coming out on that with all this evidence. And again, mathematical analysis. This is not something like a visual inspection. These are actually put them through the algorithms and everything.
Here we have from Muhammad Kebab. This is Muhammad Kebab. This is when Muhammad Hijab is asking a question for a friend. He says, oh, I have a friend named Muhammad Kebab. He wants to know if you would marry me. I mean, him. But David, what are you thinking having IP on? His voice, voice cracks drive the Muslims crazy.
Yeah, I'll have that till the day I die. That's a problem I got in my throat.
These Muslims debating here have already missed 2 prayers. Don't you guys need to be out grooming or shooting? That's true. You guys are in trouble. Let's see. 5 silver pesos. Lol, no, don't have any money for a super chat, but I just want to thank you, Dr. Wood. I surrendered my entire life to Christ 2 weeks ago, shortly after watching your testimony, so thank you.
Awesome.
Super cool. Super cool. Glad. And I mean, 5 silver pesos been watching our stuff for a long time.
Awesome.
So that is awesome. Awesome stuff. Why would God allow Satan to influence every baby? Yeah, it doesn't really explain. It's just Satan's putting his hand on every child born in the world. Just couldn't do it with Jesus. So yeah, the question is, if Allah is protecting Jesus, why isn't he protecting Muhammad or anyone else who's special? Like, if you want to say it's just for really special people, okay, why is Jesus the only one then? Why is Jesus unique in all these ways? He's the one who's the word of Allah. He's the one who's a spirit from Allah. He's the one who's born of a virgin. He lives the most miraculous life in history. He raises the dead. He creates the same way Allah creates, fashioning something out of clay and then breathing into it, and it comes alive. And then he's the only one who's sinless. And then Allah won't even let him die. So why is Jesus so special if Muhammad is the important one? This is all going to tie into a video clip from the Muslim Cowboy where he's arguing that, or is it a tweet? Yeah, it might have been a tweet, but he's arguing
Yeah.
that, yeah, he's arguing that even Jesus has to submit to Muhammad. It's actually powerful, powerful stuff. Um, do you think the UK can stop Islam from taking over? Yes, of course. I mean, you've got 4% of the Muslim population in the UK. I mean, you've got a 4% Muslim population in the UK. That's not a huge. That's not a huge percentage.
And again, a lot of apostasy happens there for the same reason it happens in the US. A lot of these Muslims come to Western nations. They realize they like music, they like pork, they like alcohol, they like not having to wear head coverings in public. And a lot of them deconvert. Like I will see at the park here in Reed Park. So this is in Tucson, Arizona. We have refugees that come here from the Muslim world. And I'll see like a Muslim family, sometimes at Reed Park or at the zoo or something. The mom will be like covered, she'll have a head covering. The daughters will be in their teens, they don't have head coverings. And so they're walking around. I once saw a Muslim, a car family of Muslims drive past me, like music, like loud as could be, this like techno beat or something. And like the woman in the front seat was clearly had a head covering on. And I was like, what's going on here? So I've talked to people also at the Tucson Refugee Ministry. They say a lot of them come here and they immediately just leave Islam because there's not a strong Muslim community here for them to interconnect with. There are some, but a lot of them are kind of like, they feel like they're elitists or they're more westernized. And so a lot of them just deconvert or they don't really put a lot of effort into it, especially raising their kids that way. So there's a lot of young people here. I see them and they're secularists at this point. So yeah, the same thing happens in the UK. A lot of them integrate into the Western world and the next generation deconverts.
Yeah, so as far as do you think the UK can stop Islam from taking over? Yes, absolutely you can. And the point, but as I pointed out, that you're getting to the point where how do you do it peacefully now that you've spent years attacking anyone who's pointing out to you what's going on? So can the UK do something to stop Islam from taking over? Yes. I don't believe just just so everyone knows my view, I don't believe that Islam is going to take over the UK. I just believe that the longer you wait to deal with the issue, the worse it's going to be. The worse and the bloodier it's going to be. In other words, if you wait until you have a 20 or 30% Muslim population before you decide to actually actually deal with it, it's going to be much harder to deal with that sort of situation. So yeah, because there's a reason I've been blasting away at Islam for all these years. I think it's the best way to deal with the problem, and it's the non-violent way to deal with the problem. Other people know you deal with the problem by ignoring it and letting the next generation deal with it when it's way worse. Stupid idea. What were you saying?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, the future is going to be really interesting. If trends continue, the Muslim and Christian populations will decline. But again, Christianity has been in this situation before. Islam really hasn't. If you go back to like the time of Constantine, I think I've seen some estimates that like 60% of Christians were professing Arians because Arius's songs were so popular that they really caught on. So you had, basically the minority was the Trinitarian Christians and the majority was actually growing into the heretical version. Christianity's done for, it's over. That didn't happen. Christianity continued to thrive. It came back. Same with the Muslim takeover of the Christian world, marching into Spain, taking over, coming into France. It's over for Christianity. It comes back. It fights. So we've been in these situations before. And here's the thing. In Islam, they believe they're supposed to be on top. They're supposed to be dominating. When that's not happening, it's a psychological problem. In Christianity, we are supposed to be servants. We're supposed to be persecuted. So when this happens, we already have the biblical texts for a perfect guidance for this, and we end up thriving. As Tertullian said, the blood of the martyrs is seed of the new church. When we go into these phases where we're losing people or we're becoming a minority, we always have a good way of bouncing back because we have a historical precedence that's already been set. So yeah, it's not going to happen in our generation, but 100 years we'll be still here fighting. We're not going to decline like everyone thinks. These are people that don't study the history of Christianity well.
Yeah, and that's an important point because whenever I say, look at the apostasy rates and so on in Islam, people say, but there's high apostasy rates in Christianity too. And yeah, going along with what you're just saying, we're not told that we're the ones who are supposed to be the most powerful force in conquering the world.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. Not a problem for us. In fact, if you take the Bible seriously, you get the impression that we're going to be persecuted and so on. Yeah. So we're not going to be we're not going to be dominating the world and controlling the world and so on. In Islam, that's what's supposed to happen. So if you look around, and yeah, the problems in Islam are huge. I mean, up until the 20th century, they always had a caliphate. Then the caliphate lost to Western nations. What happened after that? A bunch of Muslims in a lot of countries tried to modernize. They said, "Well, I guess we got a problem here. We need to be more like Western nations." So you can look at pictures from places like Afghanistan and Iran and so on from the 1960s. They look like you think you were talking about a Western nation. You had the revolution in Iran, and you had the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood. And what was their message? Not so fast. Perhaps Allah is testing us or even punishing us because we've compromised. And so the reason Allah isn't blessing us and He's making us weak right now is because we've got too much compromise in the ummah. So we need to crack down and become more devout. Then Allah will bless us to take over the world. Well, guess what? That the hardline Shia Islam that spread, the hardline Sunni Islam spread, the Muslim Brotherhood, Salafis, all that stuff. If, in spite of all of that, Islam is still weak and crumbling, then what do you do? That's the point. They're getting to the point where, okay, now we've tried to become more devout and stronger. If even that collapses, and even that can't compete with a modern nation, and even that can't defeat Israel or anything else, and you're just completely powerless, what else do you got? What other confidence do you have? And so,
nothing.
Because keep in mind, IP, it's almost on the level of like a scientific hypothesis. Why are we so weak right now? Is it because Islam is the problem and it just makes us like this? Or is it a test from Allah? Well, we can find out if it's a test from Allah, because if we become way more devout in our Islam, then Allah will bless us more, and then we'll get back to conquering the world. Well, guess what? Now we can test that. We can test that theory. The theory is being tested right now. That's why I'm saying they're in emergency panic mode right now. They understand. Guys, we said if we just go hard and we start having all these terrorist organizations fighting everyone in all directions and so on, if we do all this, then Allah is going to bless us. If we become more devout, then Allah is going to bless us and we're going to get back to conquering the world. If they do everything they're supposed to do and they're still weak and pathetic and a joke, kind of a failed prediction. Yeah. It's a parallel with like the new atheists coming along. Hey, if we just get rid of Christianity, then the society will become more rational and scientific. And okay, as soon as you have large numbers of Christians becoming atheists, all of a sudden the entire world goes insane and everything plummets, and it doesn't get more scientific and it doesn't get more rational. It becomes less rational, less scientific. It's like that. It's like, hey, we have a theory about what's going to happen if we go in this direction. Then you go in that direction and all your theories fall to pieces. Okay, then we need to step back and rethink. And you actually see this in the atheist world right now. It's like, whoa, maybe we need to stop what we're doing right now and regroup and rethink, because this is not going the way we thought it was. That's the exact same thing you're going to have with the Muslim world. This is these guys told us if we thumped our chests real hard and said, oh, Allah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, the things are going to get better and we're going to take over the world. If they find out it's not working, oopsie, where are you going now?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, Christianity will go through these ups and downs periods as we have for about 2,000 years, but we have a built-in mechanism, built-in ideas already in the biblical text that we are supposed to be servants and persecuted and struggling. So this is why when Christianity has declined in the past, and it always bounces back because it has that built-in system already. So I'm not worried about Christianity. I would expect, based on the past, that it will continue to decline for a few more decades. Again, 100 years, it'll start bouncing back again, and we'll keep going through these cycles.
Indeed, 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 indeed. So, yes, people have predicted the death of Christianity for a long, long, long time. Should we go through a few passages about Muhammad to see if he is, in fact, the perfect man?
Alhamdulillah.
Let me see. Oh, hey, here's some. Hey, I'm just going to read these rapid fire. Jump in anytime you want, IP.
Go for it.
But for our friend who is challenging the age of Aisha, oopsie. Hey, here we go. By the way, IP, check this out. What happens whenever we talk about child marriage to our good friend, the Muslim cowboy? What does he say? Do you remember what he says?
He says Muhammad was perfect and he would do anything that his prophet did, stuff like that.
And he says, no, she's a woman.
Yeah.
They'll
Oh,
say,
yeah, he does say that.
yeah, nope, she's a woman, and because she reached puberty and this and that. And he says that every time. And here he just sounds like he has no clue what he's talking about, right? So, but look at the actual hadith chapter. This is the chapter heading. Giving one's young children in marriage is permissible. We say child marriage. She goes, stop lying. It's not child marriage. No, it ain't child marriage. It's woman marriage. She was a woman through and through. Your own sources call it child marriage. Your own sources call it child marriage. Giving one's young children in marriage is permissible. This is Sahih al-Bukhari. Why? Why is it permissible? By virtue of the statement of Allah, and for those who have no monthly courses, i.e., they are still immature. Surah 65, verse 4. So your own source is saying immature, young children, and immature. And then the next part here, and the iddah, that's the waiting period after you've had sex with a girl and then divorced her. How long does she have to wait before the next guy can bang her? The iddah for the girl before puberty is 3 months in the above verse. So a prepubescent girl. You marry a prepubescent girl, have sex with her. You decide, nope, I don't like her too much, and so I'm going to trade her in for another little child bride. And so you pass her on. How long does she have to wait for the next guy to have sex with her? 3 months. 3 months. The iddah for the girl before puberty is 3 months. And then, as an example of this whole scenario of marrying young children, prepubescent girls, we have Sahih al-Bukhari 5133, narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years, i.e., till his death.
Ugh.
This is the perfect man. And what I find interesting about this IP is the Muslim cowboy. He can't even bring himself to acknowledge. He says I defend Muhammad without apology. And yet he's saying, no, this is talking about a grown woman. Aisha was a grown woman. What's it say? Young children, immature, girl before puberty. Girl before puberty should say it all. 6 years old, consummated at 9 years old. It's all here. It's not this Muslim cowboy. This is not hard. This is not hard to see. Young children, immature, girl before puberty, 6 years old, 9 years old. Where are you getting? Oh, and the Muslim sources call her a grown woman. Where? Where do you see grown woman here? What planet are you on? Muslim cowboy land, aka fantasy land. Okay, zoom through a couple more of these. The marrying of a daughter by her father to a ruler. 5134. Narrated Aisha, the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. How old was she? 9 years old. 5158. Narrated Urwa, the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha when she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years. You have this over and over again. 6130, fun passage, Muslim cowboy, Sahih al-Bukhari, narrated Aisha, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's messenger used to enter my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. And then we have, in parentheses, the playing with dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Isn't this fascinating? The sources, his own Muslim sources can say she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. And then when we say, hey, that's child marriage, he said, no, it ain't. She's a woman. Why are you guys lying? She's a woman through and through. His own sources say, little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty.
Now, the parentheses, I believe, is a commentator, right?
Yeah, that's Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Yeah, he points out because your average knowledgeable Muslim is going to say, wait a minute, why are they playing with dolls? Images are forbidden. And so he adds commentary on why Aisha was allowed to continue playing with dolls, even after she married Muhammad. And the reason is they only applied the rule about playing with dolls after a girl had reached puberty. Once she reached puberty, then you couldn't play with dolls anymore. So he's pointing out the Muslim sources that talk about Aisha playing with dolls, that's actually saying that's Islamic. That's the Islamic way of saying she hadn't reached puberty yet. So we're talking about a prepubescent girl. All right, where'd our friend go? Dunubs, you still there? Because I can keep going, Dunubs. I could keep going. I just quoted some passages from Sahih al-Bukhari. We could go through Sahih Muslim. We can go
Now,
through Sunan
here's
Abu Dawud.
also here's also the fact, if he can like prove like in the hadith, like by age calculation, that Aisha was older than 9, then you just proved your Muslim sources contradict each other.
Yeah.
So which is it?
Yeah, and it's a problem that it's just deceptive. There's always like 3 or 4 places in these arguments, because they used to write articles, and there was one article that came out, and then they all just started copying the arguments, and it's filled with
Yeah.
nonsense. It'll say, oh, Tabari says blah 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 blah, and it's not even in Tabari. It's a lie. And so they're counting on the fact that most people are going to read this and go, oh, okay, yeah, Aisha was 18 or 21 or something like that, and not actually going to look up all the sources. And it's just
Yeah.
it's part of what I was talking about before. You just got to be relentless. The response to us presenting information is lying. That's what they do. They respond with lies, and so you just have to keep refuting them. All right. So our Muslim friend, if you want us to go through more sources, happy to. Oh wait, hang on. This is interesting. Whoa, this is interesting. Dunubs, hey, credit to Dunubs. He said, wow, this was more sources than I thought. I have to think about this. This is very odd. I have not seen all these before. I don't know what to say. All
That's
right,
honorable. That's very
that
honorable
is
of you.
that is very honorable. And hey, I'm not going to read all of these, Dunubs, but since you said that you're going to think about these, I'm going to put them on the screen. You can always go back later and look them up. So I'll just give you a few more references here. This is Sahih Muslim 3480, narrated that Aisha said, so this is Aisha herself, the Prophet married me when I was 6 years old and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9 years old. Also, Sahih Muslim narrated from Aisha that the Prophet married her when she was 7 years old, and she was taken to him as a bride when she was 9 years old, and she took her dolls with her. So notice, Danubs, it says here that she was 7 years old when Muhammad married her, and that the marriage was consummated when she was 9. That is the difference you get. Some of these sources say she was 6 when the marriage contract was written. Some say 7. And this actually makes sense, because if I think they're about things when I was 6 and 7 years old, sometimes there's confusion. Sometimes I don't have it clear in my mind. Was that when I was 6, or was that when I was 7? But the sources across the board say that she was 9 when the marriage was consummated. So she was paying attention to when that was. This is also Sahih Muslim. Messenger of Allah married her when she was 6 and consummated the marriage with her when she was 9. Sunan Abu Dawud, the Messenger of Allah married me when I was a girl of 7 years. Suleiman, one of the narrators, said, or 6. And he consummated the marriage when I was a girl of 9. This is Sunan an-Nasai. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah married me when I was 6 and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9. And I used to play with dolls. Yeah, because you hadn't reached puberty yet. History of At-Tabari, the Prophet married Aisha in Shawwal in the 10th year, blah, 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 blah. On the day he consummated the marriage with her, this is at the very end, she was 9 years old. And of course, you have the Quran here saying, talking about the rules for divorcing prepubescent girls. So, Dunubs, you've pointed out that you're not familiar with a lot of this. Just wanted you to have those sources, because yeah, when someone's saying one thing and we go to the sources and someone says, okay, I have to think about this more, we have all the respect in the world for that, because it's the same with us. There's all kinds of things there's all kinds of things that me and Inspiring Philosophy here don't know. And if we have further information, we will do our best to modify our beliefs in light of further information that's coming in. And it looks like you would do the same. So that is a good characteristic. But just so you know, Denubs, there are you have over 200 Muslim sources saying that Aisha was 9. The people who are telling you, no, she was older and you can kind of piece this together, they're liars. Ask them for their sources and look them up and try to actually connect them. It never, ever, ever works, because it's just deception.
Yeah, and when you see that she was that age in the Muslim sources, we'll see my debate with Daniel Hakikichu on how harmful child marriage is to girls. So Aisha was basically mentally abused, physically abused. This was not good for her. She was groomed basically based on the data I see and comparing it with what modern psychologists can show. This was not good at all.
Mm-hmm. So that's one question. Would the perfect man What's your final expert assessment? IP. You're one of the people who's actually gone through journal articles, piles of journal articles, piles of studies on the impact of child marriage and so on. So I can actually say you're an expert on this issue. You debated the world's leading defender of child marriage, Daniel Hakikachu, and you schooled him and showed that he's only able to defend his positions by completely misrepresenting sources, and that his view is completely sick. I mean, according to his criterion, you could have sex with an 11-month-old baby as long as you get parental consent. And he thinks that this is all fine. So, in your expert opinion, would a man who not only had sex with a prepubescent girl, not only did he have sex with a prepubescent girl, he also claimed that it's fine with God if you want to have sex with a prepubescent girl, and identified himself as the pattern of conduct for literally billions of other people to follow, until we get down to our time and we see that the world's leading defenders of child marriage are followers of Muhammad because they take him as the pattern of conduct. Would you say that this man is the perfect man?
Never in a million years.
Never in a million years. So even if he was the most wonderful person in every other way, would you agree that he wouldn't be the perfect man just because of this, even if he was perfect in every other way?
Oh, absolutely. You can't get around this. This is pure evil. There's a reason that child predators are hated in society today, because we know how harmful and evil this is and how it messes up children mentally for many years. So yeah, the fact that anyone would try to defend this or think this is a good thing, you're living in a fantasy land. You're delusional. At the end of the day, if Muhammad did commit statutory rape with Aisha, that was evil and there's no way out of it.
I would agree completely. All right, let's go through a couple more passages, then we'll get back to our good friend, the Muslim cowboy. Because the reason Muhammad as a sex addict came up was because of certain passages where Muhammad, it's just funny because the Muslim cowboy eventually quotes this, "Oh, no one had control over his desires like Muhammad." Yeah, let's check out some passages here. It was narrated from Jabir that the Messenger of Allah saw a woman. Then he came to his wife Zainab, who was tanning a leather, and fulfilled his desire. Then he went out to his companions and said, "A woman comes in the form of a devil and goes in the form of a devil. If one of you sees a woman, let him go to his wife, for that will repel what he feels in his heart." So guys, get the situation in your mind here. The Messenger of Allah saw a woman. What's that mean? He's walking down the street in Medina and he sees an attractive woman. What does he do? He runs to Zainab. He runs to Zainab, who was the wife of his own adopted son, until Muhammad lusted after her and then took her for himself. Right? So this is the wife of his own adopted son. Notice he blames the woman. A woman's walking down the street. "You see, look at that. She's a devil. She's a devil. She comes in the form of a devil and goes in the form of a devil." He's not the one with the problem. She's the problem, right? This guy can't walk down the street without seeing a woman and becoming aroused and having to run back to his wife. Now, the other additional detail here is she was tanning leather. That is one of the nastiest, smelliest processes there are.
Yeah.
Let's just say Zainab, sitting in the stench of tanning leather, would not have been in the mood. Didn't matter. Muhammad came back. Nasty, horrible, horrible smells. We're going to see some more about horrible smells here shortly.
And, compare this to what Jesus taught. He says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. But, it's like the exact opposite. He never blames women when they're being lusted after. It's always the actual sinner's fault. Muhammad, exact opposite. It's the woman's fault.
Yeah, and this is the problem in Islam. It's that in order to avoid temptation, you have to control other people and keep them from tempting you. It's not you have to have self-control and avoid being tempted. It's always someone else's fault. And the problem is you eventually get out of that environment where you're controlling all women, and you take some of these guys who've never developed a concept of self-control. Everything is someone else's fault. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to have self-control. You control everyone else. There is no concept of self-control here. And then you take that person and you put him in the middle of the UK, and then is it his fault if he goes around and starts banging 12-year-old girls and stuff, grooming them and so on? No, of course not. It's not his fault. It's their fault. So
Disgusting.
so notice here, IP, can you walk down the street without having, oh no, I have to run because I just saw a beautiful woman. I have to run and bang my wife. Can you walk down the street without flipping out and running back to your wife?
I'm pretty sure every time, yes, I have not had to resort to that.
And we could say that we have to deal with way more than Muhammad did, right? Because
Oh, sure.
there's girls in their little shorts all over the place. Oh no, I have to run home immediately because I can't control myself. This is the supreme moral example, a guy who can't walk down the street without becoming sexually aroused and frustrated and having to run home to his wife. Wild stuff.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like sex addict behavior.
Yeah, check out the heading here. Recommendation to the one who sees a woman and is attracted to her to go to his wife or slave woman and have intercourse with her. So you see.
Thanks, commentator.
Yeah, this is the commentary here. This is for Muhammad is the example of someone who sees a woman and is attracted to her, becomes aroused, run back and have sex with your wife or slave girl. Thank you. Thank you for this, Muhammad, the man who had complete control over himself. Jabir said, I heard the Prophet say, if one of you likes a woman and feels attracted to her, let him go to his wife and have intercourse with her, for that will repel what is in his heart, the lust in his heart. All right, now we get to some of these passages about Muhammad being a sex addict. So we've already seen Muhammad couldn't walk down the street without becoming obsessed with sex and having to run back to one of his 9 wives or one of his slave girls. Sahih al-Bukhari 2268, narrated Qatada, Anas bin Malik said, the Prophet used to visit all his wives in a round during the day and night, and they were 11 in number. I asked Anas, had the Prophet the strength for it? Anas replied, who is to say that the Prophet was given the strength, we're talking about sexual strength here, was given the strength of 30 men. And Saeed said on the authority of Qatada that Anas had told him about 9 wives only, not 11. So here, Muhammad was given the sexual strength of 30 men. That accounts for why he could go around having sex with so many women and girls in a single day or a single night. 5068, narrated Anas, the Prophet used to go around, have sexual relations with all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives. I think that was the particular hadith that was brought up to the Muslim cowboy to call Muhammad a sex addict. But check this one out, IP. Sahih al-Bukhari 5215, narrated Anas bin Malik, the Prophet used to pass by, have sexual relations with all his wives in one night, and at that time he had 9 wives. Now it's easy to look at the hadith there and miss the chapter heading, whoever had sexual intercourse with all his wives and then took one bath only.
What?
IP, remember when I talked about the bad smell of tanning leather? It's a terrible smell.
Uh-huh.
Terrible, terrible, terrible bad smell. You know what's an even worse smell than that? Being wife number 9 and smelling 8 different women's vajayjays all over your prophet who's climbing on top of you.
Yeah, he really cared about them for sure. Look how much well he treated them all.
9 wives in the hot Arabian desert. Temperature 110 degrees. Muhammad bangs one wife. Hoop, gotta get up. Nope, not gonna take a bath. No time, have to have more sex. Runs to the next wife. Bangs her. Up, you gonna take a shower finally, Muhammad? Nope, no time, have to get to the next wife. Just imagine by the time you get to wife 6, 7, 8, 9, your prophet is covered in the sweat and smell of all his other wives while he's climbing on top of you. This is the perfect moral example. The guy who had the supreme self-control like no other.
Supreme self-control, ladies and gentlemen.
And this is of course Muhammad when he saw. I mentioned Zainab, that was the wife of his own adopted son. This is why Muhammad married her. He went over to his adopted son Zayed's house one day, and his adopted son wasn't home. Instead, he was greeted by his adopted son's wife. Said she jumped up in haste and excited the admiration of the messenger of God, so that he turned away, murmuring something that could scarcely be understood. However, he did say overtly, "Glory be to God the Almighty. Glory be to God who causes hearts to turn." This is what he said and how he reacted when he saw his adopted son's wife with very little clothing on. So his
And the
oh, good.
story is so ridiculous because we're told that Allah wanted Muhammad to marry Zainab so that he could show that it was okay for future Muslims to marry their adopted sons' wives, but then they abolish adoption later. So it's like, what's going on here? Okay, so Allah really needs to show Muslims it's okay to marry their adopted sons' wives. This very niche, weird thing that's rarely going to happen. But then they abolish adoption anyway, so it's pointless. What was the whole point of that? Well, the most logical and simplest explanation is Muhammad was just a horn dog, couldn't control himself, so he made up all these lies and these false revelations to justify it.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because you pointed out best explanation. All right, best explanation, because most of them say, prove it's not that, prove it, prove this, prove that, and so on. What's the best explanation here for what went on there? So we already saw, and I will go ahead and pull up what IP just pointed out. So what happens, ladies and gentlemen, according to the story, Muhammad sees his adopted son's wife. She's almost naked. He starts praising Allah. Why? Because him lusting after her is supposedly revelation from Allah. You're going to marry her. Zayed's going to divorce her so you can marry her. And Muhammad tells, and so Zayed comes home, finds out. She's like, "Oh yeah, Muhammad's lusting after me. He was checking out my big bosoms and my big round butt. Ooh," and he got all turned on, started praising God. Zayed says, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and divorce you so that Muhammad can have you." Muhammad jumps in and says, "No, don't do that," because he's worried about what people are going to say. He's worried about people saying, "Oh my goodness, Muhammad's banging his own adopted son's wife." And so Allah actually responds to this. Don't want you to think that IP
How
is making stuff up. Surah
how
33.
convenient.
Mm-hmm. Guys, this is the Quran. Allah reveals in the Quran, Surah 33, verse 37. "And remember when you said to him, Zayd bin Haritha, the freed slave of the Prophet," so his adopted son, "on whom Allah had bestowed grace by guiding him to Islam, and you, O Muhammad, too, by adopting him, have done favor by manumitting him. Keep your wife to yourself and fear Allah." So this is what Muhammad told Zayd. No, don't divorce her. Keep her to yourself, even though I'm already lusting after her. "But you did hide in yourself, i.e., what Allah has already made known to you, that he will give her to you in marriage, that which Allah will make manifest. You did fear the people," i.e., they're saying that Muhammad married the divorced wife of his manumitted slave, his adopted son, who was also his manumitted slave. So notice, Allah here condemns Muhammad for fearing the people instead of just focusing on what Allah wants. Well, guess what? That's another problem for our good friend Muslim Cowboy's claim that Muhammad's perfect. If Muhammad is perfect, why is he fearing the people instead of Allah and getting rebuked by Allah here? So, not perfect. Sorry, Muslim Cowboy. You're guilty of shirk and innovation yet again. Whereas Allah had a better right that you should fear him. So when Zayd had accomplished his desire from her, i.e., divorced her, we gave her to you in marriage. Why? It gives the explanation. Here's why Muhammad had to marry the divorced wife of his own adopted son after causing the divorce by lusting after her. We gave her to you in marriage so that in the future there may be no difficulty to the believers in respect of the marriage of the wives of their adopted sons, when the latter have no desire to keep them, i.e., they have divorced them, and Allah's command must be fulfilled. You catch that, everyone? Allah says, Muhammad, the reason you have to marry the wife of your own adopted son, is so that in the future, other Muslim men who are wondering, hey, should I really, really, really take the wife of my own adopted son? It's such a big issue that men have to struggle with. All men of all time periods sit around wondering, hey, my adopted son has a really hot wife. I wonder if I should bang her. All men just run. Now, guys, obviously I'm joking here. Muslims, how many people do you know who struggle with this? Oh man, my adopted son's wife is so hot. Should I bang her? Yes, God wants you to bang her. You got it right here. Yes, God wants you to take the wives of your own adopted sons. And so this is what supposedly justifies Muhammad marrying Zainab. And as IP pointed out, problem is also in Surah 33, in order to help Muhammad even more, Allah abolishes adoption. There's no more adoption in Islam. You can take care of an orphan. You can take care of an orphan in Islam. That orphan does not become your family. There is no adoption in Islam anymore. So Allah says the reason Muhammad has to do this is so that future generations understand it's okay to do, when in reality it's a future situation that will never arise because there are no more adopted sons. There are no more adopted sons in Islam after this. So who is this ever going to be an issue for? No one. And yet Allah says the reason Muhammad really, really has to do this is so that future generations understand. That's why he has to bang his own adopted son's wife. He has to because it's such an important issue that will never once arise again in the future.
Like, this is the behavior of not only like cult leader tactics, but clearly like sex addict type tactics. You're clearly addicted to sex, and you just want any woman you can get your hands on or that you lust after. So you start inventing revelations to justify it. And then later, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's just ad hoc reasoning. This whole section of the Quran just comes across as totally ad hoc.
Yeah, that entire chapter. By the way, if anyone, Surah 33, just so everyone knows, I mean, that's filled with, I mean, that's where Allah abolishes adoption to justify Muhammad having sex with her. That's where you have that passage we just read about Muhammad and Zayd and Zainab. That's where you have Muhammad saying, oh, yes, I've received a revelation. Don't come to my house anymore and ask me all kinds of questions when I'm trying to bang all my wives. Muhammad's too shy, but this is from Allah. Allah's telling you guys to quit coming over and asking me so many questions and so on. Same chapter where Allah says that Muhammad can break the 4-wife limit. So other Muslims are told you can have up to 4 wives. Muhammad is told he can have as many as he wants. That's Surah 33, verse 50. You have all these interesting things in Surah 33. And here's the amazing part. According to Ubay ibn Ka'b, Muhammad gave a list of people. He said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from these 4 people. He gave a list. Ubay ibn Ka'b was one of those 4 people. According to Ubay ibn Ka'b, over 200 verses are missing from Surah 33. Over 200 verses are missing from Surah 33. You've heard about Aisha's sheep eating verses, and conveniently it's verses like breastfeeding adults, and it's the verse of stoning women for adultery. Aisha, keep in mind, Aisha was almost on the receiving end of being stoned to death for adultery because she was off with some guy and hanging out with him for a while in the woods. And then they come out, oh yeah, he was just helping me look for my bracelet. And she was on the verge of being stoned to death. That's when Muhammad says, I have a revelation that exonerates Aisha. You can't be accused of adultery unless there are 4 male witnesses. Are there 4 male witnesses who saw this guy banging my wife? No? Oh, then she's innocent. But here's
Very
the thing.
Convenient revelations.
Oh, it is. So think about this. So Surah 33, as messed up and depraved as it is now, used to be much worse. It used to say, hey, if your wife has to be around some guy when you're not around, then she needs to put her breasts in that guy's mouth so he'll feel like her son and won't be sexually attracted to her.
Oh, yeah, that's how that works.
Possibly the stupidest teaching in any religion ever. But Muhammad's wives understood that. They had a problem with that. And Aisha had a problem with the verse of stoning an adulteress because she was almost on the receiving end of that. And conveniently, Muhammad dies, and then a sheep comes in and eats these verses. Here's the interesting thing. Didn't just eat those 2 verses, ate a bunch of pages of it. This really sounds like Muhammad's wives did some Quran cleaning once he died and they saw the opportunity. Let's take out a bunch of this stuff that we don't like. And so it's just amazing that the stuff you have now in Surah 33, that it's okay for Muhammad to break the 4-wife limit. It's okay. Muhammad had to take the wife of his own adopted son, outlawing adoption, all this stuff. That's the stuff we look at that and go, this is disgusting. And this is the sanitized version. This is after women do some creative editing to get rid of the worst stuff. Perfectly preserved.
And then you compare that to the Gospels. Jesus tells his followers, you're going to be hated and persecuted, killed for my name. It's the exact opposite. It's not this all about lust and power and wealth and men just getting wherever they want. Jesus promises his followers, you're going to be hated, persecuted. You're not supposed to be rich. You're supposed to share your wealth with as many people as possible. These kinds of things. Like, exact opposite. So, like, it's comparing apples to oranges. These are not similar religions whatsoever. One is clearly about fulfilling man's desires. One is clearly about humbling humanity so that we can be on a better path in the future.
Indeed. And so when we look at this, while I often take a non-apologetic stance when confronting enemies of Islam, I sometimes fail to follow up with actual authentic narrations to give a true representation of this perfect way and our perfect messenger. Our perfect messenger. He says he's perfect, even though the Quran and the Hadith say Muhammad was a sinner. And even though for the rest of us looking at this, he seems like a genuinely repulsive individual. Like you would not want to be around this dude. There's a guy who goes around, has sex with all his wives in one night, only takes one bath after everyone. And then this guy would go to the mosque covered in semen and so on. Absolutely disgusting individual. Do not follow this guy. But he's the perfect messenger, even though the Quran and Hadith say otherwise. But he's responding. But I mean, in his response here, he includes this Hadith. The messenger of Allah used to kiss and embrace while he was fasting, but he was the one of you who had most control over his desire. If the guy who had the most control over his desire is the same guy who couldn't resist banging a 9-year-old girl, if it's the guy with the most control over his desire was the same guy who couldn't see his adopted son's wife without lusting after her and wanting to bang her, if the guy with the most control over his desire is the guy who couldn't walk down the street without freaking out, getting a boner and running back to bang his wife while she's covered in the stench of tanning leather, what does this say about the rest of the population then? If they look to Muhammad as the guy, as the champion of self-control, this would have to be the people in history with the least self-control ever, if they look to Muhammad as the paradigm of self-control. This is wild stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that?
In the chat, I saw the typical whataboutism. Every time we bring this stuff up, they got to bring up Mary, and they'll be like, "Well, Mary was 12 when this happened." Okay, that's debunked in less than 1 minute. First, this is not a valid comparison because Mary was supposed to be a perpetual virgin. If you want to take the late unreliable sources that say she was 12 when she was betrothed to Joseph or married to Joseph, you also have to agree that they never had sex because those same sources say she was a perpetual virgin her whole life. Furthermore, the Bible doesn't actually give us Mary's age. The actual, what we actually see is that scholarly sources like the work of Michael Satlow or Amram Trooper say that girls were basically marrying in their late teens to early 20s in Palestine in Jesus's time. Michael Satlow says it could be as early as mid-teens, but they had to be past the age of menarche. And in this period, scientific research has shown that girls did not reach the age of menarche till about 16 and a half. So it would have been exceptionally rare for any girl to be married below the age of 16. Based on all that, it's far more likely Mary was above the age of 18 before she was even betrothed to Joseph.
Yeah, but this is what they do. They have no other way to go about it. And it's pathetic. Guys, live with it. Your prophet had sex with a 9-year-old girl, according to your most trusted sources. If you want to throw those sources out and say they're unreliable, fine, do that. But until then, what are you going to do about it? Oh, we'll lie about Mary and we'll lie about Rebecca. We'll respond with lying. That's what I literally started the live stream off by pointing out that the solution for everything in Dawah is lying.
Mm-hmm.
It's pathetic, especially for people who say, we respect Mary more than you. We respect the prophets more than you. And all you do is lie about them to justify one false prophet. That's it. Your religion
Yep.
is one guy. Everything is one guy, and everything else is twisted into supporting that one guy. Islam is the epitome of idolatry. You have idolized one person and thrown everyone else in all history under the bus, including your God. And you've deified this one guy. Let me go ahead and give you another example of this.
Oh
This is the
God.
Muslim cowboy. Ready for this, IP?
Oh
The
God.
Muslim cowboy says, even Jesus cannot be a true believer unless he loves Muhammad more than his own self. And
Why?
he quotes Muhammad here. Anas bin Malik reported, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, none of you, now keep in mind, he's talking to his followers, none of you have faith until I am more beloved to him than his children, his father, and all other people. And he says, see, this, and he applies this to everyone in history. So everyone in
What?
history, you can't be a Muslim until you love Muhammad more than your children, your father, and all other people. And the Muslim cowboy says, even Jesus is not a Muslim unless he loves Muhammad more than his own self. So Jesus has to say, you know what? I love this Muhammad, even though I'm the one. So this is what Jesus, the Muslim Jesus, would have to say. The
Ah,
Muslim Jesus has to say, you know what? Even though the Quran identifies me as the word of Allah, even though the Quran identifies me as a spirit from Allah, even though the Quran, in the Quran, I'm said to have been born of a virgin, even though I'm the one who in the Hadith is the only one that Satan couldn't touch, even though I'm sinless in the Muslim sources, even though I'm the Messiah according to the Quran and the Hadith, even though I create in the same way that Allah creates, I fashion things out of clay and breathe into them, even though I am supremely superior to Muhammad in all these ways, and Muhammad is a child molesting, murdering rapist, I have to love him more than I love myself. That's what Jesus has to say. The Muslim Jesus has to say, according to the Muslim cowboy, or he won't even be a Muslim. Guys, keep in mind, Islam is not, Muslims will say, Islam is just a religion of submission to Allah.
nope.
According to the Muslim cowboy, you can't just submit to Allah. It's not enough. You'll go to hell. You'll go to hell if you just try to submit to God. Jesus himself, according to the Muslim cowboy, Jesus himself can only submit to Allah by mindlessly loving Muhammad, child molesting, murdering rapist, more than
You,
anyone else in all of history.
you
Has
gotta
to
love
love,
how stupid this is.
has to
Like this is
has
just
to love. Yep, has to love him. Yeah, wild stuff. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, like we believe in Christianity, you have to love Jesus more than anyone else, but we also believe Jesus is God, the Creator, who was a perfect, sinless man who died for us. So I mean, obviously very, very different than what Muslims believe, but apparently Muhammad has to be even more loved than that. Like, and he's just a guy. He's just a guy in Islam, according to Muslims. He's not God like Jesus is to Christians. And this is basically cult level activity here where you got to like love this guy more than anyone else. I mean, that's absurd and ridiculous. We would never say any mere human created prophet that we have to love them more than our own children, our own family members. Jesus stands out because he is God. He is sinless. He died for our sins. That's very different. And my question, of course, is okay, if the Muslim cowboy believes this, what if Muhammad, he was alive during the time of Muhammad, and Muhammad wanted the Muslim cowboy's 6-year-old daughter? Would he gladly give that poor child over?
Oh, of course, dude. I mean, seriously, you don't even have to ask that. And the Muslim cowboy would agree. So you could ask the Muslim cowboy, hey, if Muhammad were here and he said, I want to bang your 6-year-old daughter, what would you say? In a heartbeat, he would say, of course I would. Yeehaw. Guarantee you.
Wow,
I
we need to
guarantee you. You can check him on Twitter. You can check it with him on Twitter. I guarantee you, he would say, "Of course, I would give her. I would give him my 1-year-old daughter. What? She, if Muhammad wants her, then I'll just call her a grown woman because we could just call things whatever we want them to be. So if I see a little toddler on the ground and Muhammad wants her, I'll say, well, by magic, that's a grown woman. If I see a guy who, according to my own sources, is a sinner, I could just say he's perfect. All you have to do is call something whatever you want it to be, and that's how it works in Islam. It's a
Yeah,
powerful religion.
terrifying how far this would go. What if the daughter was running away for her life because she didn't want any of this? Would the Muslim cowboy, the own father? Yeah, I'm asking questions here. Would he hold her down for Muhammad? Like, these are some terrifying things to think about, and I don't even think he's thinking about the implications of these things. If Muhammad would go after 6-year-old Aisha, I mean, why wouldn't he go after Muslim cowboys' daughters? Like, this is terrifying cult-like stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like reason is out the window, love is out the window. It's all just to fill Muhammad's sick, lustful desires at the end of the day. Meanwhile, in Christianity, Jesus dies for us, he suffers for us, he never would ever ask for such things from us. There's no indication anywhere that this would be the case. And yeah, if Jesus asked for my daughter, I would be like, this is a logical contradiction. This can't be Jesus, because God would not ask for this kind of thing. Therefore, yeah, this is clearly a demon, or logic itself is thrown out the window, because I would basically say that no morally perfect being could ask this type of thing. So no, if someone claiming to be Jesus did ask that, if Muslims want to turn this around and throw it against us, like, no, it's a logical contradiction. A morally perfect being would never ask for a girl of that age to do those horrible things to her.
And so that's what we get from the Muslim cowboy.
Mm.
But here again, I mean, Muslims claim that they're the ones who don't associate partners with Allah and so on, and they make the
Yeah.
entire religion about this one guy. Everything is revolving around this one guy. Like they walk circles around the pagan Kaaba. They all walk circles around this pagan guy, Muhammad, and he's the focal point of all the religion. And as you pointed out, because Muslims will say, "Well, you treat Jesus like that." That's because we believe that Jesus is God. That's why we treat him like that. You guys say, no, Muhammad's just a prophet, and you treat him exactly like you would treat God. And guess, as IP was pointing out, we don't treat prophets like, we don't treat people we regard as prophets. We don't treat them like this. We don't say, hey, you have to love the prophet Jonah more than you love your own family and children and so on. We don't say this about apostles. We don't say you have to love the apostle Paul more than you love your own family members, more than you love everything. And Muslims saying, hey, Muhammad is...
Oh, and the Apostle Paul was far more moral than Muhammad would ever have been.
Night and day. And so all I see from this religion is idolatry. I mean, Islam has spread more pagan idolatry than any other religion in all of history. It's not even close. Not even close. The chief export of Saudi Arabia is pagan idolatry. Always has been. And it's just amazing. They're the ones. I mean, if they saw anyone else in the world walking circles around a big cube and running up to kiss this black stone and building their entire religion out of mindless devotion to one guy who's the most obvious false prophet in history, every Muslim in the world go, look at this pagan nonsense. But it's the middle of their religion, and they walk around pointing at everyone else. This is wild stuff, man.
They claim that we're turning a mere human into God when we worship Jesus, even though Jesus claimed to be God in multiple places. But it's the irony is just astounding.
It's pretty ironic. 2 more tweets here from the Muslim cowboy. I swear to Allah, I will PayPal you $1,000 and delete my channel if you can find a name of Allah being the deceiver. He's responding to Ice Cold Mystic here, who said, no, you are deceived by the greatest of all deceivers. One of the 99 names of Allah, Christians call him the devil. So the argument here, ladies and gentlemen, is in the Quran, Allah is referred to as Khair al-Makarin, which is best of those who do makr. Makr is deception. So you'll see in translations, best of plotters or best of planners or so on. That's fine as long as you understand it's the kind of plotting and planning that involves deception. But the root word there is makr, which just means deception. So Allah is the best of those who do it. So this gets pointed out. You're deceived by the greatest of all deceivers. And Muslim Cowboy says, I will pay you $1,000 and delete my channel if you can find a name of Allah being the deceiver. So that's his response. Then he gets schooled in the comments. And by the way, guys, it's good to go to his tweet and look at the comments, because the Arabic speakers just destroy him. They destroy him. So Ice Cold Mystic responds, according to the Quran, Allah is the best of deceivers, Surah 3, verse 54 and 830. According to the Bible, however, Satan is the father of lies, John 8:44. Do Christians and Muslims worship the same God? And I have to point out, ladies and gentlemen, Surah 3, verse 54 and Surah 8, verse 30, the context, so as far as people being saying, oh, this is just best of planners or best of plotters, the context of both of those passages is Allah deceiving people. In fact, the context of both of those passages in mainstream Islamic thought is Allah deceiving even people who are following his prophets. Keep in mind, this isn't everyone, because Surah 3, verse 54, the context is the crucifixion of Jesus. Well, it's the death of Jesus. Surah 3, verse 55 is the one where Jesus is said to die and rise in the, as far as what the word means. Muslims have to reinterpret that because of Surah 4, verse 157. But in the context, it's the Jews plot against Jesus, but Allah gets out of it by tricking them. So again, there are Muslims like Khalil Andani and so on, Ismailis, who else? Ahmadis. There are Muslims who would give some interpretations, different interpretations of chapter 3, verse 55. The vast majority of Muslims over the centuries interpret that as Allah tricking people into believing that Jesus is dying. So the best of deceivers in 354 would be, the context would be that Allah is tricking even Jesus' own followers. So he's tricking the Jews, but he's even tricking Jesus' own followers into believing that he died. And so Allah is the best of deceivers. And then the context in Surah 8 is that Muslims didn't want to go out to the Battle of Badr because they're like, oh, we can't fight. And so Allah gives a dream to Muhammad, and convinces Muhammad that only a few of the Meccans are actually going to show up to fight. And therefore, the Muslims are going to completely outnumber the Meccans. And so Muhammad tells his followers, I had a dream. We're going to completely outnumber those guys. So they all believe Muhammad. They go out to fight. And then they find out they're the ones who are outnumbered. The Meccans outnumber them. But then Muhammad guarantees anyone who dies for Allah paradise. And then
Yo,
what's that?
These passages in Jeremiah, he is taking them wildly out of context.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about those. I just want people to understand the context of calling Allah best of deceivers. In Surah 8, so Muhammad gets a dream. He tells his followers, it's okay, we're going to outnumber them. They go out, they find out, no, they actually outnumber us. They fight anyway. Muhammad guarantees paradise to anyone who dies fighting his enemies. The Muslims win. Then they come back. Hey, why did Allah tell us that there's not going to be many people out there? You're starting to sound like a false prophet, Muhammad. You said there's not going to be many people out there. And Allah has to explain that he had to trick them into going out because otherwise they wouldn't have just listened and gone out and fought. And so they didn't trust him. And so he had to trick them into going out and fighting. And in that context, he says that he's the best of deceivers. So Allah brags in the Quran about being the best of deceivers. The Bible calls Satan the father of lies. Now, what do you think about these passages in Jeremiah? So the Muslim cowboy responds. So the Muslim cowboy gets embarrassed right here because the Quran brags about Allah being the best of deceivers, and then Muslim cowboy's response is, but the Bible says that YahWeh is a deceiver too. So, you don't know your own Bible. Yeehaw! What do you think about that?
Oh my God. Well, Jeremiah 27, it literally says in the prior verse, and you, Pashur, and all who dwell in your house shall go into captivity. To Babylon you shall go, and there you shall die, and there you shall be buried, you and your friends to whom you have prophesied falsely. O Lord, you have deceived me, and I was deceived. What? Like, it's clearly telling us that this is coming from some other guy. And in Jeremiah 4, he's being ironic, it seems like. It's not God talking. This is Jeremiah talking. Then I said, Lord God, you have utterly deceived this people in Jerusalem, saying, it shall be well with you, whereas the sword has reached their very life. So God is not talking in this. This is Jeremiah talking to God and kind of being a little ironic here. It's not directly deceiving because Jeremiah is literally prophesying disaster coming upon the people in the future. So he's not deceiving. He's literally giving them a clear warning.
Yeah, I interpret Jeremiah in Jeremiah 4:10. And guys, just so you know, Muslim cowboy, my goodness, read the book of Jeremiah. Read the book of Jeremiah. So yeah, you have two ways of interpreting Jeremiah 4:10. that makes sense at all in light of the rest of the book. And the way the Muslim cowboys interpreting it is not one of those ways. Interpreting
Mm-hmm.
this as Jeremiah actually saying, our God's a deceiver, and that's the message of Jeremiah, would not make sense at all in the context of the book of Jeremiah. So you can interpret him as being ironic here, or you can interpret him as at the beginning of Jeremiah, he's sort of with the rest of the population. So Muslim cowboy, you obviously have no clue what you're talking about, just like in Islam, you have no clue what you're talking about when you talk about the Bible. But the main thrust of the book of Jeremiah is God has revealed that he's going to punish the people of Judah by sending the Babylonians. And you had false prophets who said, no, God's never going to punish us. God is always going to protect us no matter what we do. It doesn't matter what we do. God has promised us peace no matter what. He's just going to forgive us no matter what we do. We can sin all we want. We can worship pagan gods. We can do all this stuff. God's never going to punish us. He has guaranteed us perpetual peace. And God sends Jeremiah, no, that's not what I said in the law. What I said in the law was, if you do the same things the pagans do, I will treat you the same way I treated the pagans, and I will drive you out of the land. That's what I said in the Torah. And so Jeremiah 4:10 here, you can either interpret him as being ironic, or you can say that in the beginning, Jeremiah thought that God was going to protect them as well. Because look at what Jeremiah has said. I said, ah, Lord God, surely you have deceived the people, saying you will have peace. Is that what God told him? No,
Nope.
God told him, if you rebel, I'll punish you the same way I punish pagans. And so you can read this as Jeremiah thinking the same thing other people thought. In other words, they've just developed this idea that God's going to protect us no matter what. The entire rest of the book of Jeremiah is God saying, I never said you're going to have peace. That's not true. And then Jeremiah going around saying, guys, this is not what God told you. He said he was going to punish you. And so these Babylonians who are coming, you need to deal with the fact that they're going to come and defeat you. Surrender to them, because that's what God wants. And other people, no, don't surrender to them, because God will grant us victory. So is this Jeremiah? Is the takeaway of the book of Jeremiah, God is a deceiver who tricks people? No, it's people don't understand what God is saying, and people think they have some privileged status where God's always going to protect them no matter what they do. And it's not like that. No, he didn't make this promise to you. No, he's not he's not deceiving you. He didn't tell you you're going to have peace no matter what. And so there's no way to read the book of Jeremiah as, yep, our God's a cosmic trickster like Allah. You can read that. You do read the Quran like that, because that is what Allah does in the Quran. So nice try, Muslim cowboy. But my goodness, I mean, think about this. Hey, your God's the best of deceivers. What? No, oh, show me that. Okay, it's right there. Well, your Bible. What is this, man? This is Dawa.
Yeah, it's the same crap. They always take these verses out of context because they don't understand them. I mean, I'm like, wow.
And we're all supposed to just mindlessly go along with them the way they go along with Muhammad. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. All right, let's go to some super chats here. In Belgium, it's the westernized Muslims who defend Islam the loudest, while their own mosque-going family hate them for becoming secular. Sounds about right. Yeah. Apostasy in Turkey is also through the roof. Yeah, it's across the Muslim world. It's estimated around 8 to 10% of.
Yeah, when I was getting my master's degree here in Tucson, Arizona, we had a foreign exchange student from Turkey, from Istanbul. I had some conversation with him. He's like, yeah, I'm an atheist, and most of my friends in Istanbul are atheists. Like, it's just a common thing over there. So yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, it's estimated at 8 to 10% across the Muslim world of people who are still in Muslim countries and are counted as Muslims. Between 8 to 10% of them are actually closet atheists. Mm-hmm. And so that number is growing, and that's one of the reasons Muslims are panicking. So what you're saying is Muhammad had all of his kids while Jibreel was around, but then became a weakling. Good thing Maury wasn't around back then. Yeah, Maury would have found some problems with the narrative. IP, you read all these books? Mashallah, Allah, see.
Yeah, I read this one. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Seems like I've read most of the ones up there. I mean, there's still a couple I have that I'm saving, but, haven't gotten to them yet. That
is some straight up nerdy stuff right there. How would a misuse of absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence look like? My friend said that after I said there is no evidence for the Injil. My friend said that after I said there is no evidence for the Injil. What do you mean by Injil? You mean like the Islamic version of the Injil, some book that Jesus had? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I think the claim is the Quran in the 7th century is affirming the Injil and saying that Christians are still reading the Injil and that Christians have to judge by the Injil, that Christians have no other ground to stand upon unless we stand upon the Injil. All the Quran ever does is affirm the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of the Injil. So it sounds like our friend here brings this up to a Muslim, and the Muslim says, no, the Injil is a book given to Jesus that Christians don't have anymore. And so he would have responded, we don't have a book. There's never been a book like that. There's never been a book that was revealed to Jesus and that Jesus handed to his followers. Jesus didn't bring a book. And it sounds like his Muslim friend responded with, but absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. So just because there's no evidence that there's a book given to Jesus doesn't mean that Jesus didn't have a book. Now,
okay, but they also need to provide evidence for it. That you just can't make that claim and then assume it's true. Like evidence of absence isn't absence of evidence isn't evidence of the absence. But still, that's usually said by atheists in response to Christians after that we've offered evidence. Mm-hmm. So like if you actually think there was this book, you actually need to actually show evidence for it. I mean, I could claim all day that Jesus was a secret druid or a secret Hindu, but you need actual evidence for it. You just can't make those claims.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I could say, hey, Muhammad was an alien. And you say, what? Prove me evidence. And I say, what? Just because I don't have any evidence doesn't mean it's not true, and so on. Right. Yeah, guys, you have to be careful with this principle because it's going to be useful depending on how much you would expect to have the evidence if the claim are true. In other words, so I just give an example here. If I say there's no fully grown elephant in this room, well, the elephant in the room means something else. So let's say there's no fully grown rhinoceros in this room. Say, why? I say, well, I see no evidence of a fully grown rhinoceros in this room. Compare that with there's no insect in this room. You say, why? Well, I look around, I don't see any insect in this room, therefore I conclude that. Right? If I say there's no rhinoceros in this room, and you say, why? And I say, well, because there's no evidence of a rhinoceros in this room, and it doesn't make sense in that case to respond, well, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. No, in this case, absence of evidence is evidence of absence because I have very, 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 very good reason to think that if there were a fully grown rhinoceros in this room, I would have evidence of it. And I don't. And therefore, that's a good reason to think there's not a fully grown rhinoceros. Compare that with an insect. If I said, I don't see an insect, therefore there is no insect, you say, well, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Well, the reasoning there is just because you don't see any evidence doesn't mean that it's not there, because you wouldn't have a tremendously good reason to think that if an insect were hiding somewhere that you would have evidence of it, right? You'd have to really, really search the room in order to know that. So the use of the principle depends on what kind of evidence you would expect if the claim were true. There are some situations where you say something that happened thousands of years ago, what evidence would you expect? And so you can't rule things out based on absence of evidence. So in the case of Muslims saying that there's this Injil, would we expect evidence of a book given to Jesus if this thing existed? How much would we expect to be aware of that? Depending on on what level of confidence we would have in expecting there to be evidence for this book, that's how much you can apply the principle, right? So keep in mind what the Muslim claim is. Christians still had the Injil in 7th century Arabia in the time of Muhammad, around Muhammad. He's ordering Christians to obey their book. So think about this. Think about what the claim actually is. One, a book is given to Jesus by God. Jesus delivers this book to his followers. Christians have the Injil, the Islamic book given to Jesus. They have this in the 1st century. They have it in the 2nd century. They reliably preserve it until the 3rd century. the 4th century, the 5th century, the 6th century, and all the way into the 7th century, and all the way down to Arabia. Christians have this book, this Islamic book given to Jesus. So Christians preserve a book for 7 centuries reliably, and it spreads at least across the Middle East all the way down into Arabia. They still have this book. If there was a book given to Jesus that lasted centuries and spread across the world all the way down into Arabia, would we expect there to be at least a mention of it somewhere? I'd expect there to be some evidence of it other than just Allah saying it.
It's utter nonsense.
In other words, I think that would be closer to is there a rhinoceros in this room? Well, I think I would be aware. I think I would know it if there were a rhinoceros in this room. Therefore, me not seeing a rhinoceros is good evidence that there isn't a rhinoceros in this room. The absence of evidence is evidence of absence. And likewise, if there's a book that spans centuries that Christians are using for centuries, and that Allah thinks Christians are supposed to know about when he criticizes them, hey, you should be following that book, and we're supposed to know what he's talking about. This assumes that Christians even know what this book is talking about. Allah takes it for granted that we know what he's talking about. And so that's a situation where, of course, you would expect there to be at least mentions of this book. So problem. And again, keep in mind, Allah orders Christians to judge by the gospel, not by the Quran. So he's preserving that book too. That's the book for Christians. And Allah says no one can change his words. Muslims say, nope, that book was lost and corrupted and so on. Okay, well, you're contradicting your own God there. Point is, there's no way out of this, and just applying a principle like that doesn't get you away from the issue. Hope that helps. IP is right. Eli Copter has nothing to do with the accident, but Ricey saying happy birthday in a U.S.-made helicopter during bad weather. That was the real problem. He sang happy birthday.
Yes. That? Makes sense.
Lol, no, wanted to thank you, David. I just copied the chat on their behalf. Oh, okay. That was 5 pesos from other. Okay.
I see. Yeah. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Michael Nobody says, hey guys, surely I couldn't donate sooner since sheep ate my last donation. Stupid sheep. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, we will.
Drat sheep.
Have you guys heard about a former TikTok star, Ali Abulaban, killed his wife and wife's friend? He's a Palestinian American. Wonder if he's Muslim? No.
He's not?
No, I mean, I haven't heard of him.
Oh, okay.
I will screenshot that, though, because I might want to look that one up.
Yeah, that might be interesting.
Let's see. I once said, Alhamdulillah, what's it like in New York City, but you didn't get the joke. Sing it into the tune of Hey There, Delilah. Perhaps you know not the song. No, I don't know the song Hey There, Delilah. You know that song?
Hey There, Delilah. What's it like in New York? Alhamdulillah. What's it like there in New York City?
Well, it's sing along with IP Day, ladies and gentlemen. Sheikh Mike Wingjalinj, peace be upon me, says, maybe it's a typo and Muhammad was 9 and Aisha 54. Yeah, you could. And that's the sort of thing you can invent with the people who respond to the claim. They just, oh, well, no, this is the rule and this is why it's a different date. And it's all just made up stuff. Do action figures count as dolls? Blow-ups too? Yes, those would all count as images. David, show the hadith why Muhammad married Aisha. Well, we went through Muhammad doing some of that, but yeah, in the hadith, Muhammad has a dream where Gabriel brings him a present and he opens it and it's Aisha.
Man, God really wants to make sure Muhammad gets all the sex he wants.
That's exactly what Aisha. Convenient. It's exactly what Aisha said. D. Wood, I've been watching you for years and have always wondered why you never finished your debate with AP. Thanks for all your good work. Yeah, we started a debate. Well, at first it was just, I never posted my response. I waited several months. And then when I was ready, AP was saying he wasn't ready. We kind of went back and forth, like of who is too busy on something else to continue with it. And then we just kind of like lost interest at some point. I mean, we still talk about finishing it. I don't know when that's going to happen. especially since AP's all weakling about his atheism now. Scotty says, special thanks for helping our brother Danubs. His mind was clouded until you aired out Muhammad's receipts, Momo's receipts. Yep, we got the receipts. We got the receipts right here. Imagine being named after the most well-known pedophile in history and being proud of it. Shaking my head. Imagine that. IP, is it true that Mary was 14 when she had Jesus? Other people say 16. If yes, does that implicate God in evil somehow? Love your work. Love you. You kind of already answered this, but if you want to recap.
Yeah, there's no evidence of that. It comes from a second century source, the Proto-Evangelium of James, which says she was 12, but she was also supposed to be a perpetual virgin. So there was no sex supposed to be ever involved. However, again, that's a late unreliable source. Earliest estimates from Michael Satlow and Abraham Trooper would put her age more likely at around 18, basically, when she would have been betrothed to Joseph, and then she would have conceived Jesus. And again, no comparison, because God is not impregnating her through intercourse. She's a virgin. It's not at all comparable to what Muhammad did to poor Aisha. And again, even if she was younger, God is omniscient and knows the perfect girl who could pick, who could bear the child without any complications. Muhammad just is taking advantage of Aisha for sex. It's nowhere near comparable. And when Muslims bring it up, it shows they clearly haven't thought about this for the reasons I just gave.
Yeah, so yeah, we have nothing remotely resembling a reliable source on the age of Mary. So the Muslims are like, therefore she was 12, or therefore she, okay, you can't make that jump. When we say Aisha was 9, we're not just saying, well, we don't know, and therefore we're going to say 9. We're saying you have hundreds, literally hundreds of sources saying that she was 9. And so we have an issue there. And it's just insane to say, well, we don't have a reliable source on the age of Mary, therefore we'll say she was 12. It doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. And so the only time you have like an age for Mary is in later sources when they're responding to objections. Why do you guys believe that Mary was a perpetual virgin? How can you believe that? Why wouldn't her husband have had sex with her right after she had Jesus? Why would she have remained a virgin? So eventually people came up, which totally made up. And even the Catholic Encyclopedia says this is on the level of fables. They came up with a story. Joseph was really, really old and wasn't interested in sex. And he basically marries her to take care of her like a daughter. And therefore there was no sex ever. And so it's in that context they start coming up with stories. No one, not Catholics, no one takes these stories seriously, because
real quick,
it's clear that these are much later sources. Go ahead.
Correct myself. In the Proto-Evangelium of James, she conceives of Jesus when I think she's 16, but she's married to Joseph at 12. But the conception I think happens at 16, if I'm not mistaken. But again, Joseph is married to her to be like a guardian, and he's not supposed to ever touch her. In fact, when it's shown that Mary is conceived, Joseph gets in trouble because he's not supposed to have ever touched her. She's supposed to be a perpetual virgin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, these are late sources that no one takes as historically reliable on the age of Mary. And if you do, guess what? No sex ever. So this just, there's no scenario where this could be used to justify Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old, with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl. It doesn't work. It's all smoke and mirrors, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe make sure D-Nubs knows Rebecca wasn't 3. I hope he knows that. I hope he's not using that as an objection, because that is stupid. How can we be sure these embarrassing texts about Muhammad were not satire or outright insults and were then later taken as gospel by idiots? Well, it's because they come from the Muslim community, where if you're insulting Muhammad, they chop your head off. So I don't think they're just taking insults as Muhammad as authoritative. Thanks, guys. Yep, no problem, Robin Hood. Hey, David and IP, what do you guys think about the biblical prophecy of the Antichrist lining up with the Islamic prophecy of the Al-Mahdi? Would that necessitate an eventual satanic Islamic takeover? You have any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, isn't it in Shia Islam that there's supposed to be like the return of Jesus and the Mahdi that are supposed to come? Mm-hmm. And in Sunni Islam, it's just the return of Jesus. He's the Messiah. Is that correct?
You do have some references to Yeah, you've got some of the figures spread around and so on, but yeah, the
It,
Shia Islam definitely more emphasis on the Mahdi. Um,
it varies, and you know, honestly, I'm a post millennialist, so I don't think there's gonna be a future Antichrist or tribulation. Check out a video I did on my channel, "The End Times: A New Perspective," to get another idea of how the end of the world is gonna happen before Jesus' return. I actually have a more positive outlook, so it's a little different.
mhm, mhm. And from normal end times perspectives, you could note the parallels between the Antichrist and what Islam says is going to happen. If you're like me and you think Islam is weak and is going to crumble, you don't think it's going to be
No.
you don't think it's going to be the real Antichrist. I think it's too weak and pathetic. Honest literally means drapist in Hebrew without D. Yeah, that's funny. Me and AP found out the other day because I always thought this was just from ancient Hebrew or something like that. With when Muslims say Allahu Akbar, that Akbar in the Bible is a mouse, and so do people actually hear Allah is a mouse and so on? And so we pointed that out, and we asked Israelis who speak Hebrew if they still say that, and they said yes, absolutely. When Muslims say Allahu Akbar, they're hearing Allah is a mouse. Pretty funny.
That's awesome.
And so Pakistan, top notch in Google searches. Yeah, donkeys. Yeah, child, animals, dogs, stepmom, cat, snake, pig. Yeah, pretty creepy. We have Muhammad Kebab. How merciful Muhammad was. He didn't want any of his wives feeling left out in the night. He is truly the best of all men. That is how someone would respond defending Muhammad.
Mm.
How would you refute against Muslims stating Islamic heaven is better than the Christian idea of heaven?
Oh, I can do this. Okay, actually, C.S. Lewis says the Islamic heaven would be more like hell. And read his book, The Great Divorce. In the Gray Town, which is hell, you can think anything you want into existence, and you get it, and everyone is miserable. They're absolutely miserable because real heaven, real joy is not just spoiling yourself endlessly. That slowly disintegrates, destroys you, makes you more selfish, more thinking of yourself. Real joy is loving others, denying yourself, becoming more humble. I mean, what are the most fulfilling things people talk about in their life on their deathbed? Their love for their kids, their love for their spouse, what they did to help other people. Those are things they remember. They don't remember things like, oh, I had a Bugatti and I had a big mansion. Like a lot of people say on the end of, at the end of their lives, those were just not as all they thought it was to be. So Islamic heaven is more like hell. It's not going to fulfill you and make you satisfied. What is heaven is love. And First John says God is love. So really the Christian heaven is going to be far better because it's going to be true fulfillment in what actually fulfills us, not these hedonistic, selfish desires.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Islamic paradise is spending eternity deflowering virgins. Um, I know that sounds appealing to people like the Muslim cowboy. That sounds like the thing that might get old if you're
Yeah.
doing it for eternity. You need something more than
Sounds
that.
like hell after a couple trillion years.
And keep in mind how many different directions you could go with that. I mean, just think about Plato in the Republic with the tripartite soul. You have your intellectual side, and you have your spirited side, and then you have your fleshly appetites. In Islam, everything is about those fleshly appetites. And Plato points out the more you feed that, the bigger the monster becomes until it takes over all the other parts of you. And Islam is just, let the monster take over all the other parts of you and just become this walking ball of desires like Muhammad.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It's not gonna work.
I got to wrap up here soon, by the way.
Yeah, we are. I don't think we have time to go into our videos, so I'm just gonna bust out these last few super chats. You can take if you need to take off. I can go ahead and answer them. But
Yeah.
Don't you cutting out?
A couple minutes here. Yeah, I'll get a
Okay.
couple more
All right.
minutes.
Yeah, just anytime you need to go, let me know. Jahannam being a literal valley contradicts the Quran. Well, I mean, stuff can be named after something. So in other words, you can take the name of something and apply it to hell, like Gehenna and so on. Kaaba, black cube of Saturn, black rock connected. Kaaba, black cube of Saturn, black rock connected. I don't know about the black cube of Saturn. I'm not familiar with that.
Hmm. That's I actually did a video on TikTok debunking that. There's no connection there.
Oh, okay. You have it here, folks. There is no connection. Nerdy stuff. D Wood, did you just compare IP to Mike Winger? No, it's an entirely different thing. I could joke around and say that reading books is nerdy. I'm not really serious about that. That's how you know stuff. But I mean, if, like Mike Winger is like legitimately super insanely nerdy. Everything is Star Trek this and Star Trek that. Isn't it so that God can't lie? If this is correct, then God can't be the greatest of all deceivers. Don't Muslims see this, or is it not in the Quran? No, you don't have that God can't lie in the Quran. Allah is the best of deceivers. So I don't know how they'd respond to the Bible saying that God cannot lie. I guess they'd say that's been corrupted. Of course, God can lie. He's the best at it. Allah made it appear that there was no rhino in the room. Aha, you see the proof. Lord bless you both. Jesus is Lord. And that would be more similar to the Islamic reasoning. If I said, hey, there's no rhinoceros in here because I don't see one. And if there was, I would expect to see one. Oh, but Allah could have one in the room and trick you into thinking that there's no rhinoceros in the room. And they would have to say something like that to defend their idea of the of some Islamic gospel that goes back to Jesus. Twitter continues to feel hellish. There are some truly evil people on there. Pray for God to grant me patience and peace as I shall for your sake. You running into some evil people over there, IP?
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
for sure. A lot of bad people there.
So it's not just us. Okay, that's good. All right, couple more, and then we are out. Mike Winger is the evil alter ego of Dr. Wood. Like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Nobody has ever seen them in the same room. Open your leather straps. Yeah. I like evil alter ego for Mike Winger. Evil nerdy alter ego. That'd be good. Celerio says, I agree with Plato. It's bad for the soul. Yes, that would be bad for the soul. And that's what you could say. Islam is bad for the soul. That's what you can say, indisputably. All right, last super chat here. Since Muhammad is the example and did not have kids, how come Muslims do not follow this? Well, Muhammad did have kids. His boys all died in childhood. But yeah, they're not saying Muhammad is the example in everything that sort of happens to him. So I mean, it's hard to take Muhammad as an example for any of this. I mean, Muhammad's example is, oh, I told everyone else they could have 4 wives, but I wanted more, so God gave me more, so I get 9. And so it's just a wild situation of Islam is propping this guy up, but simultaneously saying clearly saying that he is a sinner in various ways, and sometimes he's more worried about what people think than what God thinks and so on. But then you have all these other issues where he's clearly getting special moral privileges from God, and so are we supposed to take that as our pattern of conduct, always looking for loopholes and so on, and special moral privileges and so on? It's just I don't know, it's just pathetic.
Yeah.
All right, IP. Sure. So we had some videos to go through. I have to go through those different time, although they weren't even very good. They kind of sucked. It was just going to be more making fun of the Muslim cowboy for saying really, really stupid stuff. Anything here change your mind about Muhammad being the perfect man, as Muslim cowboy has said?
I mean, again, every time I see the da'i, the Muslim apologists, it just makes me more and more convinced Islam is false. They're just so bad at this. And like, sure, that's not proof Islam is wrong, but if these are the arguments you keep coming up with, these are the ways you defend your religion, it's pretty good evidence you don't have any better arguments out there. And the arguments you have put forward are horrible. I mean, horrible.
It is. And guys, think about what we've seen. For most of our lifetimes, the main go-to arguments of the Muslims was perfect preservation of the Quran and then scientific miracles. That turned out to be all a lie. They acknowledge it was all deceptive now. Mm-hmm. And what are they doing? They're cycling back. They're cycling back to arguments that were destroyed 20 years ago. IP, you probably don't even remember, but I do. When I was interacting with Muslims, I'm talking like 2003, 2004, 2005. The Muslims back then, the character of Muhammad was one of their main go-to arguments. His character was so amazing and perfect, he had to be a prophet. That's one of the reasons we started focusing on Muhammad's relationship with Aisha and Zainab and all these stories. That's why we started focusing on those things. We started focusing on those as a response. We weren't just trashing Muhammad. We were responding to their argument. And then they stopped using that argument. They stopped using that to where you almost never heard it until we get down to now. And I just saw a video of Muhammad Hijab where he uses this as one of his main two arguments that Islam is true, the character of Muhammad. So they're circling back to arguments that they gave up on years ago, hoping that people have forgotten how to respond to them. And I think this is fun because, guys, it is way easier to respond to this stuff now when we have when everyone around the world has open access to the sources, and where as soon as someone posts something, we can respond to it around the world. 2003, 2004, you didn't have YouTube to do this stuff. Now we do. And so good luck. Good luck. Anything coming up, IP, that you want people to know about?
Yeah, just that video I had mentioned is coming out soon on the scientific analysis of the names in the Gospels. It's pretty powerful stuff, and they're already gearing up to do even more research on this stuff. They're going to look at female names next, so expect some pretty good stuff showing the reliability of the Gospels. I'll let you know when that's out. This might be groundbreaking here.
Well, this will be cool stuff. Yeah, we'll definitely go through it once that is up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, to our friend, the Muslim cowboy, all we can do, we tried to reason with you. It just looks like you're going to take every depravity of, and here's the kind of takeaway issue. He's saying Muhammad is perfect. We look and say, what are you talking about? What are you seeing there? See, there are times when I understand, like the problem of evil. An atheist will bring up the problem of evil. I understand the argument. I understand the claim. The argument makes sense to me. At the end of the day, I reject the argument, but I understand all of it. When you say Muhammad is perfect, so believe in him, I literally have no freaking clue what you're talking about. What are you saying? What do you mean by perfect? What do you mean? What could you possibly mean? I look at him and I think this guy's massively screwed up and defective in almost every way I can think of. What could you possibly say? And the only thing that I've ever seen Muslims say is, look right here, he said give to charity. Look right here, he said help widows. Okay, that's fine, but so have millions and millions and millions of other people. Every good feature of Muhammad, you say, look, he's good in this way, would apply to millions and millions of other people who've said the same thing. So you wouldn't say they're perfect. You wouldn't say that makes them prophets. So what could you possibly be saying? I literally have no clue what you mean by this claim, other than saying we've just been programmed to say great things about Muhammad, and so we're just going to say he's perfect. That's it. That's all that's all I can figure out. And so I could just say, Muslim cowboy, until you come up and explain exactly what you mean by saying Muhammad is perfect, we're just going to have to keep sharing and closing out with a song.
Ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, private pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me. Islam's not for me.
Islam's
Not for me.
You heard it here, folks.
Whatever